Okay, it's 6 p.m. on April 17th, 2023. This is a regular assembly meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thomas.
Here.
Donna.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
David.
Here. Here.
Mark.
Here. Okay, we have a full assembly this evening. It is now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, next item on tonight's agenda is approval of minutes from the April 3rd, 2023 Assembly meeting minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve those. Second. Motion made by member Mucci, second by member Kinsinger. If there's no changes, all those in favor of approving those, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll accept those minutes as presented. Item 4, amendment and approval of the meeting agenda tonight. Are there any amendments proposed by the Assembly? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to move item 11B to the May 1st meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Kinsinger to move item 11B, which is Human Resources Practices and Procedures Report, to what, May 1st?
Yes, or whatever the first,
Whatever day we pick.
whatever day we pick,
First meeting in May.
Yep.
Any discussion on that?
Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this human resources practices and procedures by Assembly Member Fine Walsh, and I didn't see it this afternoon. It was on my desk here. I haven't had a chance to really read it. I think we've been asked by the parks to address several questions about what goes on with the hiring practice and safety structure within the borough. And I think the Assembly needs to spend some time looking this 2 or 3 pages over and looking at some of the questions or requests that the parks have made and seeing if we can come up with a way to answer some of the requests that they've asked for. So it would give me time to spend time looking at Member Fine Walsh's report and at least give the community a chance to read it before we make any actions on it. So that's what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Any other input on the amendment? Member Fine Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I couldn't disagree more. The community's been very vocal. They want to know what's in this report. And, I explained why the report couldn't be released at the same time as the agenda, but the report has been available for several hours now. It was released, pretty early today. And I don't see what the difference is. If I give this report now, we'll still have a chance as an assembly to discuss it publicly. I think that's what's important here. I don't understand what the benefit of waiting is. The report is there, you have it in your hands and you hear it from my voice. And I think the public wants to hear this. I know the parks want to hear it. I think they've waited long enough. I don't understand why we would put this off.
What? Mucci.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not saying, I want to put it off for a couple weeks, but usually the way we do our protocol with our agendas, information that we're going to be talking about at the meeting shows up on the Thursday or Friday, the week before the meeting, and it gives us a chance to spend the weekend or how much time we need to spend to prepare for what's ahead of us. And right, your spoken word is going to express what you have in this, but I don't think the public or myself have had a chance to really dig into this and see what this is all about. So that's the reason there's a protocol for us. I've been told several times I can't get stuff on the agenda on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and throwing when this title was in the agenda, I was looking for some type of document to look at and study, but it wasn't there until this afternoon, a couple of hours ago. So it just kind of puts us at a disadvantage, or puts me at a disadvantage of being able to look at this report and ask some questions that might be relevant to what we're trying to accomplish here. So thank you.
Okay, Member Fine Walsh.
I'll keep this short. I mean, with all due respect, Member Mucci, this isn't about you. You know, if this was an action item, you know, something that the assembly was expected to vote on, I'd understand why, you know, it was improper for us not to have time to digest it. But, you know, this is something I'm doing for the public. They want to know, and I think it's important that they know. So I'm, you know, frankly, pretty disappointed that, you know, you're playing games here.
Keep it cordial, please. So, if there's no other input, will the clerk please call the roll on the amendment to the agenda?
Bob,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
No.
Scott,
No.
Donna,
No.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
No.
So if I got my count right, the amendment fails with a 5-2 vote. So is there any other proposed amendments to tonight's meeting agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to move forward, or all those in favor of moving forward as the agenda was presented to us tonight, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we move forward. Item 5 on today's agenda, public hearings. There's a public hearing tonight for ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance updating chapter 17.02 of the municipal code entitled Safety Code Adoption. Any public testimony regarding this ordinance should be given during this public hearing. A copy of this ordinance may be found under agenda item 14B. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak during this public hearing? Okay, seeing no interest, and there's nobody zooming in. Is there, Clerk Thompson?
is not.
The public hearing is now closed. No bid awards this evening. And that brings us to item 7, which is persons to be heard related to the agenda. Then there's item 8, persons to be heard unrelated to the agenda after that. And I'd like to remind everybody there's a 5-minute time limit. And during your testimony, please address the whole assembly, and appreciate it. The policy generally has been that I like to go by when chairing the meeting is to not mention individuals' names. So it looks like we have some interest this evening. So whoever would like to speak first, please go to the podium, state your name and who you represent.
We're RD Madonna Parks. We're representing ourselves, and we'd like to speak to this Human Resources Practices and Procedures Report by Member Fine Walsh. We would like to have received this earlier in the week, so we would have had a more timely response. But we appreciate that you've taken the situation to heart and have started the process. There's still numerous questions that need to be answered. We see this as a step in the right direction, but we feel strongly that a third-party review is needed to identify all the issues that caused this tragic incident. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on items related to tonight's agenda? Yeah, just soon as, if you want to speak, as soon as the person sits down, just whoever gets to the podium first.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Nicole McMurran. I represent Nicole McMurran. And I would like to speak to Assembly members, Fine Walsh's report as, and I thank you for doing some work into sharing with the community some response to the accident, to the crash in 2016. And my sympathies are with the community, with the families, with the leadership of our community. I have to say, I was rather, if the summary provided for today's agenda is the report of actions, I remain rather nonplussed. I saw discussion of two occurrences. One, and this will be shared when we come to report time. One of that the borough has opted to do some background checks before hiring employees. Excellent move for a variety of reasons. And then the second example or action, I don't know, is that department heads will work very hard with employees to make sure that people aren't driving vehicles. I don't know what's in policy. I don't know what has been talked about in terms of other safety practices. In review of the full of the suite of events, it also seems as if it would be wise for the borough to look at communications, how we interact with our community, with our families who are impacted when such an occurrence might occur, how we deal with borough employees who are also impacted by these events and how we work with them compassionately and yet effectively. There's any number of items that I don't feel have been addressed in the report that we were given privy to this afternoon. And given all of the interests that exist, it does not seem that it's appropriate for this matter to be looked at further internally of our own accord. That does not seem like a compassionate response. And it does not seem like an action that will discover some probably really great and needed improvements for how we run our community and our business, right? And this borough in many ways is a business. So I thank you for hearing that. I look forward to the action that you might take as an assembly. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. So, does anyone else have issues related to tonight's agenda they'd like to speak to?
And if anybody, this is a different topic. Is that
Doesn't
fine?
matter.
Okay. This plan for a new hospital has gathered a lot of momentum without going to a vote of the people. I share in the widespread skepticism in our community about the need for an entire new building where the same types of services will be offered. Supposedly there are maintenance issues with our present hospital, but why not just address these? I question the assessment of what the community actually needs versus what some of us want. Presumably, we all sincerely appreciate the medical care available to us within our community, including, importantly, an airport and 24-hour available medevac services. Travel for continuity of emergency care plus specialty evaluation and treatment has become commonplace and it is valued. The quality of medical services provided here in town is not dependent on a building. It is dependent on the skill and dedication of the entire staff and the philosophy of the administration. Speaking from a nursing perspective, I have worked in more primitive settings than Petersburg and have seen excellent medical care, including the delivery of babies and the performing of minor surgeries. In trying to understand what's happening in this process, I came across a description of what is known as the sunk cost fallacy, which I would like to read. The sunk cost fallacy is a cognitive bias that occurs when an individual or organization continues to invest time, money, or resources into a project or decision based on the amount already invested, rather than evaluating the current and future value or potential outcomes. The fallacy is driven by the desire to avoid the feeling of wasted effort or resources, even when it is more rational to change course. The sunk cost fallacy leads people to make decisions based on the amount of resources already sunk into a project, rather than considering the future benefits and costs. This can result in irrational decision-making, as the past investments should not influence the evaluation of future costs and benefits, since these sunk costs are irretrievable and cannot be changed. Recognizing and avoiding the sunk cost fallacy can lead to better decision-making by focusing on the present and future consequences of choices, rather than irrecoverable past investments. I sincerely hope that this is not what is happening now. I have heard that we haven't had a vote because the funding is coming from outside sources. No matter who pays for it, we, the residents of the Petersburg Borough, will own it, and this comes with the obligations of ownership. This will impact all of us, and I think we should be able to vote on it. Thank you.
For your testimony this evening. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Joe Bertignoli. I'm representing myself. I'll keep it brief. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to support the Parkses in their effort to get a third-party investigation into the comings and goings of incident that happened, the tragedy. I appreciate Fine Walsh's work on what he did. I read his report this afternoon and I think it's great. I mean, moving forward, some of the actions that we can take, but I think it should be looked at a little closer as to what, what led up to this whole, the whole thing that could have been avoided. And I think it would be good for the people, good for the Parkses, good for the Griesbecks, good for all, if we had an independent investigation. Doesn't have to be, ultra elaborate. I think it can be done fairly cheaply and look at it and then see what we can get out of that and then corroborate that into the work that Fine Walsh has done and is looking at policies that we're implementing now, which is great. But we can't just implement policies after something happens. It'd be nice to know how we could have improved and gotten these policies in place before and supervised what the actions that were taken that day a little closer. So I just support the independent investigation. That's all. Thanks for your time.
Testimony this evening. Mr. Koenigs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Assembly members. My name is Don Koenigs. I speak for myself. As a representative of the community, I also address this to the community at large. And I'm here to speak regarding new business item resolution 2023-04, which would authorize approval by resolution of the site for selection for building of a hospital and coordinating their efforts with the construction management, et cetera, of the hospital. I believe this is premature. I don't believe the assembly nor the hospital board has done its due diligence. And the reason I say that is I've not heard anything mentioned at all about the overall cost and operation of the facility that is proposed, which would entail a life cycle cost analysis. What is being proposed is something that for the community is a hospital with much more grandiose, but to meet Fed codes, according to what we've been told. And I don't think during the process that's gone on, what was unfortunate was because of the COVID situation, that the community had the opportunity to be engaged in an open dialogue, I don't feel, from what I've been listening to, between the community and the hospital board and the assembly itself. And so I'm opposed to this. I would like to see, as Harold Madolin pointed out in his candid letter to the assembly, we need to avoid a boondoggle, some of the boondoggles that we've seen witnessed throughout the state, whether it's building a facility at the end of the road, $20 million for transportation, and then use it 1 year and close it down. You can go on and on. And so my suggestion to you is to make sure that before you proceed with this project, you have the confidence and the vote of the public on what you're endeavoring to try to do before you authorize construction and selection of a site. I don't believe there's been due diligence. My own personal experience in working with a council in the past was that the cost of a construction of a project will be somewhere between, capitalization costs will be between 8 to 10%. That's a capitalization cost. You need to figure out how you're going to own and operate that facility. That's the very thing that the council did in 1980 when they built the new hospital. They came back and did a life cycle cost analysis. It cost $8 million, a little over $8 million for that facility. But it was over $300 million to own and operate it for the next 30 some years. That's a life cycle cost analysis. I believe that should be presented to the public before you start moving forward with your site selection, getting a contractor. You haven't done your due diligence. And I would close with this comment. Asking dumb questions, which you may feel I've just done, is much easier than correcting dumb mistakes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony this evening. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on items related to tonight's agenda? 8, persons to be heard on items unrelated to any thing on today's agenda.
Here are Madonna and Artie Parks, and again, we represent ourselves. And first of all, we want to thank Mayor Jensen and the Assembly members. We appreciate the time and energy you've given this situation. It could not have been easy coming to our house or speaking with us on the phone about this tragedy. Listening to our story definitely was not easy. Most of all, thank you for hearing us and responding to our concerns. We also hope you've had time to read the 25+ letters sent in by Petersburg citizens asking for answers. Some of those citizens are sitting here tonight with us. I would like to read our statement now. Mayor Jensen and Assembly members, we are Madonna and R.D. Parks, parents of Molly Parks, our only child, who was one of the young women killed on July the 4th, 2016, while working for the Petersburg Borough. On that day, Molly picked up Catherine Cardenas and drove to Sandy Beach. There they met Marie Giesbrick, Christopher Allen, and their immediate supervisor and the Parks and Rec director. The work assignment that day was for Molly, Catherine, and Marie to set up stations around the loop for the 4th of July foot race. They were to be driven around the loop by Christopher Allen in a Borough van. Before these young women got into the Borough van, Molly and Catherine asked to drive. They've been driving that exact same van all of June 2016 as day camp counselors. They were very familiar with it. They were told no. Within 15 minutes, Molly and Marie were dead and Catherine was injured. The driver of the van, Mr. Allen, had a seizure, which made him lose control of the van while driving through the middle of Petersburg. He hit a guardrail at 55 miles an hour. The van went airborne and crashed upside down into an embankment. Fortunately, another Parks and Rec employee, Sina Martinez, who was scheduled to be in that van, overslept and never made it to work that morning. These young women were dead or injured because the borough hiring protocol did not prevent the hiring of a man who could go unconscious at any moment while on the job. And after he was hired, Allen had 2 on-the-job seizures, one caught on Parks and Rec video just months before the 4th of July, 2016. After these seizures, the Parks and Rec department was advised by a Petersburg doctor not to have Mr. Allen drive. Mr. Allen was still on the job, lifeguarding and driving after those 2 seizures. Because borough safety procedures weren't in place to make certain that Allen was fully capable of safely handling the work he was asked to do. Appropriate safety procedures would have kept Mr. Allen and those around him safe. Also, communication between management and staff would have been key in this issue. These are just some of the red flags that went unnoticed or the borough was not prepared to address. The first one being hiring a man to work in a facility geared towards children and not doing a background check. That is why we are asking the Assembly to review the circumstances leading to July 4th, 2016. And while we appreciate the borough has taken steps to improve the safety of its citizens, unless you look at this tragedy from the beginning, how can you go forward with change? The NTSB does not go to an airplane crash site, look at all the twisted metal and declare it was an engine failure. They reassemble the plane, check maintenance logs, interview survivors and witnesses, etc. They then make educated decisions as to how the crash happened and how future incidents can be prevented going forward. We feel strongly the borough needs to do an independent third-party review for 2 reasons. The Assembly and the city staff are too close to this situation. The Petersburg Police Department avoided this when just mere days after the crash, they handed their investigation over to the Alaska State Troopers. Therefore, there was never a question of conflict of interest. We feel that the borough would benefit by bringing a fresh set of eyes to an already fraught situation. A third-party review can identify the gaps and weaknesses in the borough system that surrounded this tragic event. Starting there and working forward will highlight areas of protocol, safety, communication, management, and leadership that need to be addressed and make recommendations to fill those gaps and eliminate the weaknesses in those areas. Two young women, 18 and 19 years old, were killed on a beautiful, dry summer day on the main road of Petersburg while doing their extremely low-risk part-time Parks and Rec job. They were not in a float plane, on a fishing boat, or logging. The work assignment that day put them in a Borough van driven by a man who had a diagnosed and ongoing seizure disorder. According to the Chamber of Commerce, there were 500 to 600 people on the streets of Petersburg, July 4th, 2016. This catastrophe could have happened any time that day to anyone on our streets. This tragedy could have happened to anyone's child. We and the community need to have a better system in place than there was on July 4th, 2016. Let's make the safety of Petersburg citizens the priority instead of worrying about the transparency of a third-party review. Transparency is the sign of a healthy working government. Please help us to get these answers so we, the community, and the borough can put this behind us and move forward. I really thank you for your time. We really thank you for your time.
Thank you.
For your testimony. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on items unrelated to tonight's agenda? Commission and committee reports. There are none this evening. No items under the consent agenda. Report of other officers. We have a siren test report from Fire EMS and Search and Rescue Director Hankins. Can you get through, Aaron? Recognize him on there at all, Clerk Thompson, or?
See.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, is that you, Aaron?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll try and keep it short. I'm having connection issues. In short, my report's attached. We did notice some equipment defects when we went to actually turn it on. That's why the actual test was 10 minutes late. Going forward, I'd like to institute and I've got permission from Steve to do so, to start testing the sirens monthly, every first Wednesday of the month at noon. It'll be a 30-second steady siren blast. And the, just to make sure that the equipment's working and that there are no issues when it's needed, should we ever have to turn it on. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hankins. Yeah, they used to blow the fire whistle every day at noon, so that was a daily test. Next item on the agenda is 11B, Human Resources Practices and Procedures Report. In response to an inquiry by the Parks family and the public, Assemblymember Fine Walsh will report on practices and procedures instituted by the borough's HR department since the tragic event of July 4th, 2016, to improve the safety of the borough employees and residents. So, Mr. Fine Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In light of the recent ruling issued by the Alaska Supreme Court in the case filed by the family of Molly Parks, I think it is important to provide an update to our community about what has been done in the time since the tragic events of July 4th, 2016. I know this is very much on everyone's mind right now, and I've given it a great deal of thought myself, trying to figure out how best to help. I've spoken with the Parks family, I have met with and interviewed borough admin, and I have reached out to municipal administrators in neighboring communities to see how their practices compare to our own. Many members of our community, including the Parks family, have requested that the borough initiate a full investigation of the events surrounding the crash that took the lives of Molly Parks and Marie Giesbrecht. My objective today is not to assign blame to anyone. Rather, my priority as an assembly member is to make sure we are doing everything reasonably possible to keep our communities safe, and that when those efforts do not succeed, we do everything possible to understand why, and to learn how we might improve those policies. Many members of the community are under the impression that the borough has not instituted policies in response to the events of 2016, and this is not true. There has been a robust response on the part of the borough though unfortunately, Borough admin have not been very public about this. I've spoken with Borough personnel who were in place at the time of the incident to learn what new and improved procedures have been instituted to better safeguard our community. This is what I've learned. First, the Borough has introduced enhanced screening of all new Borough employees. All Borough employees are now subject to a full background check by a reputable company based out of Ketchikan called the Safety Specialists. Requiring all Borough employees to undergo a full background check ensures that even if an employee fails to disclose important information during the application process, and even if this information is not on any record in the state of Alaska, for instance, when an employee comes from out of state, the Borough will have this information before hiring. Second, the Borough's department heads are now very rigid about which of their employees are able to operate any vehicles or other machinery on the job whatsoever. During the application process, department heads will sit down with incoming employees and go over in detail every aspect of the job description. Both the employee and the department head will sign off on this process to show that each has a full understanding of their roles and responsibilities. Only those certain employees whose job description specifically includes operation of vehicles or machinery will be allowed to do so. The department heads work closely with these employees to ensure that they are competent to safely carry out their job duties and that adequate accommodations are made for any disability the employee may have. Anyone whose job description does not include driving is now not allowed to operate any vehicle, regardless of whether someone may have a license to drive or not. It is crucial that department heads know at all times which of their employees may be expected to operate a vehicle or other dangerous machinery. I want to further address what Borough policy looks like when an accommodation needs to be made for an employee with a disability. The Americans with Disabilities Act, commonly referred to as the ADA, prohibits employers from automatically denying employment or removing an employee on the basis of a disability, such as seizures. Once employed, an employer, such as the Petersburg Borough, is required to make reasonable accommodations for an employee with a disability, regardless of whether the employer was aware of the disability during the hiring phase or if the disability arises or becomes apparent after employment. This is why it is so important to have accurate descriptions of job duties for every position, and why it is important for employees and their supervisors to know what these job descriptions include. With a detailed listing of all aspects of the roles and responsibilities for each employee position, the employee, supervisor, and department heads can work closely with HR to determine exactly what accommodations are necessary for an employee with a disability by examining what the essential functions of that employee position are. If a job description is not complete and an employee is undertaking functions that a department head or human resources are not aware of, they will not be able to ensure that an employee is effectively accommodated. This is why the Petersburg Borough provides a detailed job description for every position that sets out all the functions and requirements of that position. When an employee requests an accommodation for a disability, an interactive process is initiated between the employer and the employee. This process is a requirement under the ADA. In the interactive process, the applicant or employee, healthcare provider, and the Petersburg Borough may each share information about the nature of the disability and the limitations that may affect the employee's ability to perform the essential job duties. This discussion is the foundation of compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. During the process, the Borough may review an accommodation request from an employee or his or her healthcare provider. The Borough may obtain written medical releases and permissions from the employee. The employee's healthcare provider may not disclose information or answers questions about the employee's disability without the employee's permission. Finally, the Borough may ask the employee to provide appropriate documentation from the employee's healthcare or rehabilitation professional regarding the nature of the impairment, its severity, the duration, the activities limited by the impairment, and the extent to which the impairment limits the employee's ability to perform the job's essential functions. From here, it is the duty of the Borough Human Resources Department to determine what accommodations are necessary and if accommodation is reasonably possible. I spoke with the head of Borough Human Resources Department in Sitka, and they explained that the Sitka Borough outsources the task of determining what accommodations are necessary and if accommodation is reasonably possible to a third-party agency which specializes in this area. Small communities like Petersburg and Sitka often only have 1 or 2 individuals working in the HR department. An application of ADA regulations is complicated and requires specialized knowledge of federal law. Based on the research and interviews I conducted to compile this report, I have the following recommendations. First, I recommend that the Petersburg Borough and Assembly consider adopting a similar practice to Sitka. The cost of hiring a third-party agency is reasonable. Sitka spends $3,000 a year on this service for an employee group slightly over 100. The benefits include access to specialists with detailed knowledge of the ADA and how to apply its rules. Second, I recommend that the borough require that incoming department heads and supervisors undergo ADA training as part of their employment, so they have a clear understanding of the policies put in place by the borough to accommodate employees with disabilities. It is crucial that supervisors, department heads, and the Human Resources Department know how to work together to communicate, to ensure that reasonable accommodations are made when necessary, and that employees and the public are not put at risk. To conclude, I want to offer my deepest condolences to the Parks family and the Giesberg family for a loss terrible beyond comprehension. I want to thank the Parks family and the Petersburg community for their commitment to ensuring our safety, even when it means revisiting such awful tragedy. Facing this event makes our entire community that much stronger, and as a result of their efforts, that much safer. Thank you.
Thank you for putting that together, Assemblymember Fine-Walsh. That brings us to the next item on today's agenda, item C. And Ryan Naylor, a PhD student from Penn State University, will give us a presentation. Can you wait just a minute, Ryan? And it looks like people want to third room. Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. Yeah, it looks like everybody else is staying.
No? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Naylor.
That in full screen. And then presentation mode.
So I do it and click the first one?
You can just click the where the save button is, a little bit to the top and then over to the right. A little bit more to the right, where it has the little stand.
Oh, right here.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. So hello, Assembly members. Thank you for the chance to be able to present today. For those that are within the public that are listening in, my name is Ryan Naylor. I'm a PhD student at Penn State University. I'm in no way affiliated with Petersburg nor with any tourism industry. I'm a PhD student and this is part of my dissertation work. Before I begin, I just wanted to be able to take the chance to state that what I'll be presenting today is some of the preliminary ideas and results that have came from the 40 interviews in the 2 months that I was living here within Petersburg. And so what I am requesting is I realize that it is a very packed meeting agenda. And so I have included questions and my email and contact information within the agenda packet for you guys to be able to respond at your own time if you feel interested. So with that, I'll get started. My dissertation and research is titled Livelihoods in Tourism, Decision-Making in Alaskan Coastal Communities. Continue. So 30,000 foot view, local environmental change, as well as economic transitions, such as from the timber industry to more service-based economies, such as tourism, equates to instability in local communities. Next. At the same time, the types of tourism that are happening here within Southeast Alaska are expected to be able to only occur and grow exponentially within more northern and Arctic communities. And so there's a lot of value in being able to look at Southeast Alaska as a test, as you will, to be able to understand what type of impacts different scales of tourism have, such as small scale tourism here, medium scale tourism in Wrangell, and large scale tourism within Ketchikan. However, there's also a need for understanding Arctic and oceanic governance whenever it comes to these issues. And so what I'm trying to be able to do is use a different type of framework called sovereignty. And we usually think of sovereignty as an ability of a nation state within a geographic boundary to make decisions, such as within the borough here. Next. But I'm using a modern notion. And so some of you may already be familiar with this. And so such as indigenous sovereignty, food sovereignty, and other forms. Next. But I'm really interested in how it is redefined at its local context. Next. The reason why I am using this next is because I'm interested in issues of self-reliance in the community, issues of decision-making, independence, and ultimately the goal of this research is to be able to understand how Petersburg can best determine its own future. Next, and I'm trying to be able to specifically look at different livelihoods, the main economic drivers across the communities. So next. And so the specific kind of lens that I'm using is the enhanced levels of local resident control and decision-making regarding value traditional practices, how tourism is integrated in local economic and social systems, and how local community well-being is perpetuated over time. Particularly, I want to say well-being is defined within its local context. So some of the issues that I am looking at within my dissertation and question next, and you can just click 4 times. Is what are the main issues of control, residents, state? What is the influence of tourism on community control? How does environmental change influence this? And how can greater levels of control be achieved? So how I'm actually doing this is next. Comparing, you can click 3 times on this, is comparing again, Petersburg, Wrangell, and Ketchikan. Obviously, there's very different histories and differences between the communities. However, I'm trying to basically take 3 communities that are pretty similar in terms of their main economic drivers, such as fishing, government, and tourism, but looking at the differences of the community based on the scale of tourism development. So next, in terms of how I'm actually collecting this is archival literature, so that's simply existing documentation, but also really trying to be able to dive into local communities, such as local newspaper clippings, going to the local radio station. Next, as well as participant observation. What I mean by this is simply being able to live within the local community, being able to integrate myself, being able to understand the impacts of tourism from local perspectives. So next, this includes going to public events, such as the Little Norway Festival. Next, borough and city meetings. It's what you're seeing now, as well as daily interactions, such as figuring out how I can be able to volunteer around the community, whether it is power washing, local parks, or being able to offload halibut off a commercial fishing vessel, or even going with residents on their local subsistence fishing. I put that link on back, by the way, so it's still out there. So next, the bulk of the data is interviews. So I conducted 40 interviews within the community, and that does not include informal interviews, which is just day-to-day conversations. Next, the bulk of the interview is, like I said, 40 interviews. Next, but the key question is here is how did I decide who I want to be able to interview? Well, the first month that I'm here within the community, I basically ask individuals, who are those cultural leaders here within the community? They could be leaders of the organization, but who are those people that you go to for advice? Who are those people that really know a lot about the key livelihoods? Next, I've also developed advisory boards within each of the communities. So this occurs within here, Wrangell, and Ketchikan. All of this is basically to help me incorporate local community issues into my research. So next. Again, I have tons of data for this research. So 120 interviews within total, as well as the other documentation. Next. And at this point, you can click one more time. I'm just trying to be able to gain a preliminary understanding of some of the results of which I will be presenting on now. And before I continue, I just want to be able to stay, actually, one more slide. Let's see what it is. Yeah, one more slide. You can click 4 times. The biggest thing that I want to be able to say is that this research is based off of my master's work, which I did in Petersburg in 2019. Essentially, what I'm trying to be able to do here is make a research that can actually inform local decision-making. I'm not meant to sway it either way, but to simply state these are the impacts of tourism. And so I'll be providing a community report to you next winter, hopefully sometime in December. And I'll be also returning for community town halls. So with that, we can continue. A couple more times. All right, so the first kind of result or idea is kind of lessons for other community. You can go 3 times, I want to say. Biggest quote that I would consistently hear is we don't want to be Juneau, Sitka, Skagway, or Ketchikan. And so other issues that kind of came up was issues of scheduling with the cruise ships or circumnavigation, Kupernoth Island. And so essentially the question that I have is, I understand that these communities are very much key examples of what Petersburg doesn't necessarily want to be. But it's also interesting to think that Wrangell potentially has the type of tourism that Petersburg could reach. And so that's not necessarily referenced as organically within the interviews. And I'm just curious why that is. So next, lessons for other communities. You can click, I think, 4 times. A big portion of this is simply infrastructure, harbor infrastructure, port infrastructure. Wrangell has to make big decisions around their 6-mile dock site. So they're going through a public engagement process right now. Ketchikan also had decisions around their port management as well as private docks that came out. That Ketchikan's going to hit 1.5 million tourists this year, kind of crazy. And so, but within Petersburg, and specifically within my master's work, I found that the working dock, the authenticity of the community is really based off of having a commercial fishing focus around the harbor. And so realizing that this working dock is a priority of authenticity. Next, my question is, how can the community continue to develop mutually beneficial harbors? Next, you can go about 3 times, 3 or 4 times. The other issue that I am curious about is this issue of simply just local control. You can find this within the commercial fishing, such as year-round residents, clone fleets, or even local ownership of processors. Within the tourism industry or downtown, local ownership of local businesses and tourism businesses. And then even whenever you get into stuff that isn't charter fishing, such as, cruise tourism. You also have charter fishing, and so local ownership and even local employment within those lodges determine the amount of acceptability within the local community. And so next. So again, how does this acceptability of tourism development relate to local control? Next. You can go 3 times, let's say. A couple people, especially within other communities such as Ketchikan, would express frustration with not being able to communicate well the economic benefits of tourism. However, I study more of the cultural arguments and cultural impacts of the industry. And so I'm really curious on how you would articulate this cultural argument for tourism development and what cultural impacts could mean for the community. Next. And then I think you can, this is actually a lot, maybe 8 clicks. A couple of things that I find really interesting. I'm from Pennsylvania. I am not from an island. There's a lot less water in central Pennsylvania. And so realizing this, there's different avenues of public participation. Some of those cross-cut each community, such as accessibility, time availability for community meetings. But it's also interesting to think about social consequences, such as, say, there's 2 businesses within the local community. Some owners may feel that they don't necessarily have the ability to come up here to the podium and be able to speak for fear of people disagreeing with their opinion and then going to the other business. Other issues, simply having a sunny day in a community town hall can disrupt public participation. So given these kind of issues and social consequences, what does participation look like for community-wide issues such as tourism? I can continue. Like I was saying at the very beginning of this, I'm just trying to be able to get community feedback. I realize there's certainly a long meeting ahead of us. And so if any of this was of interest to any of you, I invite you to be able to answer the questions, and you can find my contact information within the packet. So with all that being said, I just want to reiterate that these are the preliminary results. And I really hope that this can formulate and help decision-making whenever the time comes in December. So, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, next item on tonight's agenda is new Petersburg Medical Center project report. PMC CEO Hofstetter and project manager Jay Farmwald will provide a report on the status of the new hospital project.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry,
We
go
all set?
ahead. You let me know when it's time to share and then I will.
Okay,
Okay.
so Phil Hofstetter, Petersburg Medical Center CEO. And I'm happy to be here tonight to provide an update on the new facility project and next steps. First, I want to thank the Assembly for making the hospital project the #1 federal priority in FY23. This project is vital to the community, and given the size of the project, the only way it'll move forward is if we have community support. Before I introduce Jay Farmwald, who will provide technical details and an overview of the latest progress, I think it's important to revisit and reflect on our current facility. Our current facility is between 40 and 60 years old. The oldest portion is where our long-term care residents live. Petersburg Medical Center has 13 long-term care residents currently who live full-time in, and each of their living space is about 460 square feet. Residents require 24/7 care, and our staff require to provide that care in that limited space. The facility standards for basic requirements are becoming harder and harder to maintain as the infrastructure ages. Our long-term care facility and hospital portion are the most highly regulated of services. And it's easy to take for granted that we have an ER and inpatient facilities where we stabilize, improve patients before discharge back to their homes in the communities, in this community. At times, we provide even dignified end-of-life care, and other times we have to medevac or transfer patients to higher levels of care. The question often arises as to whether expanded services would make the community support a new hospital. And while I agree with the idea of adding services, I'm more concerned that if we don't continue to move forward, the question will not be about the services we'd like to see, but rather whether we even have a hospital or long-term care facility. I'm concerned that what happened to birthing services to Petersburg Medical Center 15 years ago doesn't happen to our existing services. There's a clock ticking on the major components of our facility, and they are failing. Almost 10 years ago, PMC hired architect JYL out of Juneau to complete a comprehensive facility conditional assessment. The results show that almost all major infrastructure and architectural standards were at the end of life or exceeded their life, not to the latest healthcare standards. We made a lot of progress with a comprehensive master plan in 2019. We even looked at renovation, demolition, and building new in our existing site. I was a big fan of that. I thought that was the #1 priority at that time. I thought it'd cost a lot less. If you look at the master plan, that is the highest cost of all the options for Petersburg Medical Center. We've had multiple assembly and PMC work sessions. It's been very collaborative. Even in 2021, a resolution to reach shovel-ready status and phases, as well as designating the replacement hospital in both federal and state capital priorities was a priority. It's exciting to see that we're working collaboratively and that we're moving forward. With that, I would like to introduce Jay Farmwald. I'm very fortunate to have Jay on our team. Jay has 30 years of experience as a project manager on complex projects in Alaska, almost exclusively in healthcare. He spent 12 years with the U.S. Public Health Service, responsible for all statewide hospital renovation and new construction projects. Then for 16 years, Jay led a project management group in an Anchorage-based engineering firm. He has a successful list of hospital and health centers and long-term care projects that include Alaska Native Medical Center, Kotzebue Hospital, Nome Hospital, Anchorage Neighborhood Health Center, Central Peninsula Health Center, St. Paul Health Center, Kotzebue Long-Term Care, and Nome Long-Term Care. He was also the owner and team for major expansions at Prov, Anchorage, and Peace Health. Jay's tried retiring like 3 times, and I'm really excited that he's on the project now. He's also a consultant with Mount Edgecombe Medical Facility in Sitka and the new A&MC Emergency Expansion of Services expansion in Anchorage. So with that, I would like to have Jay provide the presentation on the latest related to the new facility. Jay, you're up.
Thanks, Phil. Sound check. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I understand that Debbie's gonna click through the slides for me. I've got about 17 or 18 slides, and hopefully this will take less than 15 minutes. So I've broken the presentation into 3 categories. First, project overview. And then I want to describe what we call the CMGC delivery method. And then thirdly, the process we followed to select a contractor to provide pre-construction services. Next, please. So Phil has touched on some of these items already. The facility code and conditions survey that was conducted in November of 2015, showing existing building and systems at the end of their useful life. That was corroborated in January of 2020 with the publication of the master plan. The master plan also looked at alternatives, as Phil alluded to. The borough then in 2021 passed resolution 2104, talking about phasing the project, high priority, donating land, etc. In May of 2022, the North Haugen and Excel sites kind of floated to the top of the study, and we continued with evaluating that particular parcel of land with environmental survey and preliminary geotechnical information. There was a HRSA grant that was awarded in the fall of 2022, thanks to Senator Murkowski, for further planning and design. Using that money, we selected Bettesworth North as the project architect. Bettesworth in January of this year finished the programming and concept design phase. And then in February, just a month and a half or so ago, the PMC board approved the selection of Dawson through a competitive process to provide pre-construction services. Next, please. This is the current site plan that Bettesworth North has developed. It's the outcome of studying several different alternatives that were covered in workshops with the borough. This is being referred to as the knoll view concept. It's a 2-story structure situated north of Haugen Drive, as you can see there, but below Excel Street. Next, please. Here's a summary of the current building plan as envisioned by Bettesworth North. Acute care, 12 beds. That's a modest increase of 4 beds compared to what is currently in Petersburg. Long-term care, an additional 3 beds going to 18. And then what you see below that are programs and services that mirror what's existing in the current facility. Next, please. Current project estimate is approximately $85 million. That number is based on the master plan report that was done in 2020 and some escalation factors applied to that. It assumes a 70,000 square foot 2-story building. Hospitals are very expensive on a per square foot basis. So in round numbers, we're talking $1,200 a square foot. That number, 85 million, includes everything, not just construction. It includes design and medical equipment, contingencies, inspections, etc. Out of that 85 million, the current estimate is about 62 million of direct construction costs. But we do need contractor validation of that number, especially in today's market. Next, please. Here's the current funding stack. the 8 million that we got from Murkowski through what is called the congressionally designated spending program, used to be called earmarks in FY22. That's money in the bank through a HRSA grant. 20 million that's shown there in a different color is the coronavirus capital project fund administered by the Department of Treasury, U.S. Department of Treasury. The state was allocated 13 million, 112, something in that range by formula, and the state selected 10 projects, Petersburg Medical Center being one of them, and submitted last fall for 20 million through Treasury. That is under final review, and hopefully that'll flip to green any day. We've also more recently approached the state legislature for an ask out of the FY24 state capital budget. We're back in front of Murkowski through her FY24 CDS program for a $15 to $30 million ask. Representative Peltola has a similar program that she can access. That request went in for 15 million, and the Denali Commission we just submitted an application to Denali for just under $1 million. If all those come true, then the funding stack would be complete, but the ones shown in black are they're not green yet, is what I can say. Next, please. So what are the next steps? The site would need to go through a rezone and a replat. That process would start this month. Final geotech, environmental documentation, and a core permit, all starting this month. The design for the site, and that just means, excavation of unsuitable materials and import of structural fill. Ideally, that design would be complete in June so that we could start that work this fall. That's all geared towards what the 2021 Borough resolution envisioned: get the project shovel ready so that the funding stack can be completed. And that's what happened on the Nome project. The project was made shovel ready and the funders showed up. Final building design would be complete in late this year, early 2024. I've shown January there. That would then allow building construction spring of 24 to start, and then we would do the offsite improvements, water, sewer, and little road upgrade summer of 24, and project ideally complete in 2026. Next, please. The funding stack and the complication of the project itself, because it's a undeveloped site and requires offsite utility extensions, et cetera. The project really needs to be done in phases. This was envisioned by the borough per their 2021 resolution. So phase 1, site work; phase 2, building shell and core; and then phase 3, go inside and finish out the interior of the structure. It does really make the project shovel ready by completing phase 1. In my experience, that's key to getting the other funders to sign on the dotted line. This also has the adjunct benefit of leveling the resource requirements and the impact on the community by stretching the project out over several years versus trying to finish everything in a short time frame. And in today's economy, with long lead procurements being longer than ever imagined, trying to buy switchgear, for example, you're maybe 70 weeks out. And so we need to start that process earlier than normal so that we can get the materials and the equipment here when they're actually needed. Next, please. So that completes the project overview at a somewhat high level. Now let me just spend a couple slides talking to you about what we call the project delivery method. The traditional way of procuring construction is low bid. The process we're proposing here, which is now industry standard for more complex projects, is called construction manager general contractor. CMGC. Some people call it CM at risk. Some people call it design assist. But what it is not is low bid, nor is it design build. Those are different delivery models. So I'm going to describe here the CMGC process, which we think is the best fit for this particular project. It's the best value process, meaning that you get the best combination of price and quality and schedule. It is the industry standard for complex projects these days. It's used by the federal government, the state, local governments, and tribes. I have some statistics here and a couple more slides that will give you some additional information on that. Next, please. So CMGC, it's where you select the architect via a competitive RFP, which is what we did. Then the AE starts the design process, which has happened with the HRSA grant money. And then the contractor is selected via a competitive RFP that involves both qualifications and limited price information. And then they join the team. The advantage of them joining the team to provide pre-construction services I'll explain that here in just a minute. Once the design progresses to the appropriate level, then at the owner's option, then the owner and the contractor can negotiate the cost of packages or a single package. For phase projects, it's always numerous packages. And they negotiate what we call a GMP, a guaranteed max price. They're able to do that because they've been at the table and understand the project. And then if you reach agreement on those negotiations at the owner's discretion, then the contractor can be given a notice to proceed to actually do the work. Next, please. The advantages are the architect works directly for the owner. That is key on complicated projects like hospitals, where you really are wanting the architect to listen and follow directions given by the owner. Design build, the architect works for the contractor. And so this model keeps the architect working directly for PMC. What does the contractor, what kind of value do they add during design? Well, numerous. They provide value engineering ideas to lower cost. They provide the phasing plans and the overall schedule input. They can procure long lead items of material and equipment. I gave you one example already. Others would be air handling units that are, 40, 50 weeks out, structural steel, which has got a very long lead. They provide constructability reviews. They, most importantly, in my opinion, provide more accurate current market estimating of the cost of the project. This model allows for phased funding and phased construction. It inherently lowers overall risk, both for the owner and for the contractor. And the way the contracts are structured, if there are actual savings at the end of the construction period, those savings revert back to the owner. Next, please. There are checks and balances in this delivery model. The RFP that was already issued back in December for a contractor partner, as I said earlier, it included both price and qualification criteria. The initial contract that the medical center would sign with the contractor is only for pre-construction services. It's not for construction. That's that owner's option that comes later. The packages are guaranteed max. All negotiations are open book compared to a bid environment. And probably very importantly here, you still do independent estimates through the design team with a professional third-party estimator to use during your negotiation of the GMP packages. The contracts include a clause that you can convert the GMPs to lump sums if desired, and there's an owner-friendly termination for convenience clause in the contract as well. Next, please. So some of the other considerations with this model, it requires good communication between all parties, a commitment to cooperation and mutual respect. You need a contractor and an architect who have experience with this model. And some funders have some special requirements that they want to see included in contracts of this type. It's important to note that if you reach the GMP negotiation step, and if you fail to reach a mutually agreeable price, then you can re-advertise and use a different model of procurement. But most federal funders in particular will then prohibit the pre-construction contractor from participating in the second round because they have inside knowledge that other contractors will not have had. Asterisk, some people view that as a positive because then everybody's truly motivated to play fair, reasonable, open book negotiations and reach fair and reasonable pricing. Next, please. So what medical projects are currently using this model? Mount Edgecombe they're 200 million plus. Alaska Native Medical Center, they're putting a major expansion in place for their emergency room, plus thinking about 3 inpatient floors above that with a helipad, that's 200 million plus. And I'm involved in those two as a senior advisor. I'm taking that as a compliment. Juneau Vintage Park Medical Office Building, a smaller project, is also using this model, currently active project. Next, please. Bettesworth North is very experienced with this. Your architect is very experienced with this model. Roy Roundtree is participating by Zoom this evening. And if you've got any questions for Roy, I'd certainly invite you to ask him about his experience. You can see a variety of projects there, ranging from the Bethel Hospital that was completed just a year or two ago at 220 million, down to some smaller projects. Next, please. State DOT and Public Facilities uses this model. They started in 2005 at this Anchorage Airport South Terminal project. Since then, Central Region has completed about 20 projects. They, across all 3 regions, they currently have 13 active projects, and there are also 3 currently advertising or pending award. Next, please. So last section of the presentation, what process did we actually use to select a pre-construction partner for this project? It was rooted in Resolution 2104, which encouraged PMC to work with potential contractors in a phased approach. We put out a competitive RFP that was open to the world and involved competitive components consistent with federal standards. Despite the attempt to garner widespread interest and numerous proposals, I personally called over 20 contractors with medical experience, both in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. Only 2 proposals were received. Lots of firms these days have resource issues. Some firms are unfamiliar with off-road Alaskan projects and just didn't want to venture there. We formed a 5-member selection committee, 4 at PMC plus the architect, to go through a 2-step process. The written proposals were read and scored, and then both firms were interviewed and rescored. Next, please. After the second scoring, Dawson Construction LLC had received 39% more points than the other firm. The selection committee was unanimous in their recommendation to select Dawson. And the PMC board then recommended $175,000 initial pre-construction contract be awarded to Dawson with options to negotiate the packages. Next, please. There are a few other factors that I would just like to mention. This project now has momentum, both in terms of design and site information, and more importantly, funding. You know, Senator Murkowski got the initial HRSA grant pushed through. There are numerous other asks on the table. So from my perspective, based on my experience, projects that are at this pivot point with respect to momentum, they either go forward or they wither on the vine. Dawson is willing to wait for completion of the funding stack. They made that clear in their interview. We've put an assembly representative on the project steering committee, which I think is a very positive thing. And I understand that there's a motion that's going to be considered where the assembly will actually approve the GMP packages, which seems appropriate since the hospital is a component of the borough. Now, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to entertain questions, and I'm sure Roy would be happy to entertain questions as well. Thank you.
Any assembly members have questions of Mr. Hofstadter or Mr. Farwell? Member Marsh.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. The information was informative, as well as the draft information that you included in the packet. I'm still very puzzled how we can justify a total of 7 more beds for the cost that we're looking at. Having dealt recently in a personal construction project of my family's, I think that $85 or $86 million is incredibly optimistic. I think it sounds like a great facility, but I don't think it's going to fit in Petersburg because we cannot afford it. I don't think the funding is, the concept is based on a lot of, if we get this funding, we can do this. If we get the funding, we have this much money to do that. I think that's shaky ground to commit to build a facility like this, as well as once it's done, its operation and maintenance is going to be astronomical. So I don't know how that is going to mesh with what is currently seeming rolling forward. And I know I've spoken to quite a few people who are who wish that it had gone to a vote to the public, being as it's going to affect people in not only medical care, but the funding sources, whether it is local funding, and we've been assured that it won't be locally funded, but it will be because it's taxpayer funded and we're all taxpayers. So I just am having a really hard time getting behind this just because we simply cannot afford it.
Any other assembly members have questions of the presenters?
Could you explain what termination for convenience, that one phrase kind of had me with question marks?
Sure, that's a pretty simple clause in the construction contract. And by the way, the contract model that is being used, the documents, is a national template model produced by the American Institute of Architects. So it's a well-tested template. We've tailored it with the assistance of the medical center's attorney that specializes in medical construction projects for this particular project. Termination for convenience means the owner, for whatever reason they deem fit, can terminate the contract with Dawson whenever they want. And stop the process whenever the owner desires.
Thank you.
Other questions? Circle around. Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you. When do we see an estimate of $85 million for the new facility, but at what point do we get a more defined number? Is that when the design is done of the facility?
So it will be in increments. The next phase of design is called schematic design. And again, excuse me, that next step in design, which is being funded with the existing HRSA money in hand. If the contractor joins the team, the contractor provides their first detailed estimate at that phase. And then depending on what that number is and what the comfort level is with that number, you immediately start value engineering or looking for ways to reduce costs if necessary. And then at the next phase of design, you do the same thing. At all these steps, test it against an independent estimate that the architect has brought to the table. And so it's an iterative process. As the design gets more and more refined, of course, the estimates get better and better. But the short answer to your question is we would have a revised estimate early this summer that would be rooted in Dawson's number based on the design at that point.
Wolf?
Mr. Mayor, before I start, I want to thank you, Mr. Fromwald and Mr. Hofstadter for the work you've done. I know this is incredibly difficult, and we're contemplating a project that's much bigger than anything this community has undertaken recently. I think it makes everybody a little nervous. That said, I do agree that we have to have a hospital here, and it needs to provide the facilities, the services that we are used to, and that I wish it could have a birthing center, but that is what it is. But like you say, we need to at least maintain the standard that we've become used to. This contract model strikes me as something that is perhaps more beneficial to the contractor than it is to the person employing them. It causes some concern in my mind that we could without spending very much money, get into a position where Dawson is kind of our only choice, regardless of what happens. And fair enough, we've got termination for convenience. We're going to phase this, and we're going to negotiate maximum prices. But what happens, if we get to even the first, what happens if we get to the second phase and we can't agree on a guaranteed maximum price? Where does that leave us? And, maybe you can speak to this. I admit this is not my area of expertise, but, if we were in a traditional contract, bidding this out, would we be in a position there, to have kind of made all these determinations before we get too far down the road, before we get to a position? Because who's going to want to pull out when we're halfway through this project and we decide, well, wow, Dawson is telling us this is going to be $20 million more than we thought. Maybe we have the termination for convenience clause, but who would pull that trigger? That would leave the community in a terrible position. Talk about projects that, end up being boondoggles. I feel like that's a big risk. And obviously no one would let that happen. And I believe what would happen is Dawson would get what they want, and the project would proceed regardless of the cost. And maybe you can speak to that. I do like the idea you mentioned that Dawson is interested or is amenable to the idea of waiting for the funding stack to come together before they proceed. But then there's also this talk of inertia, and I get that. It's going to be difficult to convince our congressional representatives to give us all this money if just kind of on a hope and a dream, if nothing's really happening. So and you probably have more insight into that process than I do, but I feel like with the traditional contract model, we would presumably be expected to have the money prior to getting going. And that's another concern I have is what happens if we start this phased approach and suddenly the federal money we're relying on dries up? What happens if our representatives in Congress and the Senate change and are replaced by people who are not interested in Petersburg or don't know us or are not very well appraised of the work we've done in the background? with their predecessors prior to them, I guess those are my concerns. And I want to echo concerns that Member Marsh has brought up. This is a really expensive project. It's not that I don't believe we need a great hospital in town, but I don't want to be in a position where, we're essentially forced to do whatever Dawson thinks we need to do, regardless of price or anything like that. And also, talking about these 70-week lead times, how does that square with the way we're getting funding for this? I mean, if we don't have the money yet, but Dawson is, telling us, hey, this is going to take 70 weeks. We need to order this steel now. How does that work? It seems like it potentially put us, in a position where, a relatively contentious position. And ultimately, I think what makes me most nervous is this community. This is, I don't think we have the resources or the funding to go to war with someone like Dawson. If necessary, if a real disagreement arises, we don't have the legal resources to really litigate this in court. So again, we're going to be kind of doing whatever they say. And if that's how it has to be, fair enough. Like, this is a, difficult time to build. And since it strikes me that contractors are going to kind of call the shots, but I would like to, make sure that Petersburg is in the best position it can be under the circumstances. So sorry, that's kind of a lot of things there, but those are my thoughts. Maybe you have, some thoughts yourself. I'd really appreciate hearing from you or Phil.
Hi,
That's definitely your territory.
okay, I got a couple thoughts about that. Good comments. So in my experience, the risk of designing this whole thing, very complicated project, and then putting it out to low bid, the risks to the community are greater. I think the change order contractors will then bid, and you'll be in a change order environment versus a partner environment with somebody that you've selected both on qualifications and price. Well, what I like to tell people is, the low bid model's good for, cookie cutter projects like Walmarts and Jiffy Lubes, not so good for complicated projects like a hospital. With respect to the phasing, it is tricky. The funding stack is a patchwork, and we certainly would have to be very careful about what we do step by step with respect to phasing. The 8 million is in the bank from HRSA, the 20 million from Treasury Department that the state prioritized will presumably show up shortly. That money, the bulk of the funding for the site development, the excavation of unsuitable materials and import of structural fill, the bulk of that work would be done with the Treasury grant. If things fell apart at that point, what's the worst case scenario? You've got a site that's shovel ready, but no funding yet for the building. And then if the Denali money comes to fruition, you could improve the water sewer to the site, which benefits the community at large. And you could also do the road improvements to Excel, again, all getting the project shovel ready. And then that's the logical pause point until the funding stack becomes more clear. And it is possible, I will admit, it is possible that the funding stack maybe pauses at that point, and you're left with a beautiful shovel ready level gravel pad at the North Haugen Excel Street site. That's exactly what happened on the Nome Hospital project. We had funding, very limited funding in place, but we filled the site, built the gravel pad, and actually we had the money to drive pile foundations. And based on that, completed phase 1 the American Rescue and Recovery Act provided funding that same year, later that same year, to complete the project. So that shovel-ready status generated $142 million check through ARA to complete the new Nome Hospital. So the question, I think, for Petersburg is, do you want to get positioned to potentially complete this project?
Assembly members have questions? Member Kensinger.
Yes, I want to thank you for explaining that. I really had some questions about this whole bidding process, and I feel like you answered the question. I would like to address a comment on whether we need a hospital or not. I think we have done the due diligence, the hospital board. I was kind of shocked when I read the report that came out 10 years ago about the state of the hospital. I think if anybody has any question on whether we need to build a new hospital or not, needs to read that report. Because I think what that says is that we're in danger of losing our hospital, existing facility, in another 10 to 20 years. And, you know, sure, we can keep on patching it together and fixing it up. But all you need to do is look at the Alaska Marine Highway system. They have some very old vessels and they keep on throwing money in them. And they keep on finding out that every time they make one fix, they got to make another fix. And I'm afraid we're going to get in the same situation with our existing hospital. I mean, I like the old ferries and I like our old hospital, but at a certain point, you just got to realize you got to start over again. And I think right now we have an opportunity to start over again. And I really appreciate your explaining how this phased approach will work. And personally, I look forward to hopefully not using the new hospital in the future, but if I have to, I'm going to be glad it's there.
Any other assembly members that haven't spoken yet? And then we'll, Member Marsh.
Thank you. Would you explain how change orders relate to the guaranteed maximum price?
Sure, excellent question. So most change orders are rooted in owner scope changes. So, and it's not uncommon for an owner to say during construction, you know, I want to change, I want to add a door to this room, or I want to add a different kind of light fixture, or whatever the case may be. So if the owner comes to the contractor during construction and says, I'd like to change the plans to include this type of light fixture versus the originally designed light fixture, and if that new light fixture is more expensive, then that is a legitimate change order.
So to follow up, may I? Thank you. So then the guaranteed maximum price would theoretically be adjustable as well.
Correct. And the other side of that discussion is, as Dawson in this case would provide a guaranteed maximum price, and then they actually submit invoices for true costs based on the competitive rates that they've already submitted in response to the RFP. If the actual costs come in, use some arbitrary numbers. Let's say the GMP is 62 million and the actual costs come in at 61 million. That $1 million savings reverts back to the owner. It's a cost that's not, that does not go to Dawson in this case. I believe also you were the one who asked a question about operational costs, and I might invite Roy Roundtree, the project architect, to just make a comment about that. He had his mechanical and electrical engineering firm look into the energy use costs, and based on the state of the existing facility versus a new modern energy efficient building, I think the energy costs are actually going to be less. Roy, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, we asked, this is Roy Roundtree at Bedford North. We asked our mechanical engineer to take a quick look at what he thought the energy consumption would be in a new facility. And obviously new systems are much more energy efficient than ones that are 40 years old. And due to that and the increased insulation and other factors, he came out with about a 15% savings on the cost of new versus the existing. Now, that is a preliminary number, but it was enlightening for us to see that could turn into a cost savings. And as far as I know, we aren't adding a huge number of staff to the building. So what you're supporting now in a hospital in terms of staff and operations could potentially go down some. I would also add that if Mike Boggs ever decides to retire, I would say your hospital's going to be in jeopardy, because the way he supports that building right now is pretty amazing. It's like an old fishing boat where it's got about 100 little knobs and things he has to tweak daily. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to just add a couple of comments, mostly in the operational, but I'll add a comment on Mike as well. I mean, when the temperature's 10 degrees out there, he's coming in at 2 and 3 in the morning, tweaking heat, like in there, constantly worried about it. So it's tough. It's a tough situation. I don't share those kinds of things on a day-to-day basis, but it's not, it's really unsustainable. It's very difficult to have a sustainability plan around that. Second thing I'd like to address is my experience with the Nome Hospital, which I feel very strongly. One of the reasons I moved down here, because we're looking at a new facility in a rural area and not necessarily having the funding stack available or subsidiary necessarily to do that. That interested me a lot because, when we went live or we went, I wasn't in on the whole building for the design, but one of the things that I noticed right away when we went live with the new facility was the separation of departments, added staff, the addition of security personnel, the addition of IT personnel, the addition of cleaning personnel is something that I am adamant about not adding. I do not want to add any staff to the building. The costs when we went live were tremendous. And not only that, but the ability to co-locate. Right now we have long-term care, we have our inpatient nursing co-located. We want to retain that. In Nome, we separated those out and you added 10 staff here and then 15 staff there. Is definitely not what we want to do. And you lost the collaboration. It completely went away. So to me, and I also had to live with subcontractors that didn't put in good parts. So for 6 years, I had things that maybe failed, weren't necessarily put in right. So the importance of selecting a good contractor, a partner in a team, and then also designing a smart facility where we're adding some space, but not an inordinate amount to have cost savings and the ability to have an up-to-date current plan to even potentially drop costs down even further is really important. It's important to me and it's important to the staff and it's important to the community. Yes, the building is expensive. It's really a challenge. It's a tough situation because you have services here that the community is used to and that they, to have a facility, to have a school, to have a Coast Guard, to have vets, to have tribal members in the community, you have to have. We're an aging population. So even if we're not going to explode in population, our services and our needs are going to, whether it's here or whether it's in Sitka or Juneau, the services will be the same, preferably here. Preferably you can receive your services here. It drives costs down. Ultimately, there's lots of studies around that. So I'm very passionate about that because I've lived what 6 years of a new facility had. So to me, it's important not to increase costs at all. So anyway, that's just a comment.
Phil, if I may add on that, I'm sorry, I can't resist, but on the Nome project, that construction contract was let by the federal government, the Indian Health Service, for various reasons. And that was essentially a low bid contract. And on the staffing issue, that facility for Norton Sound Health Corporation is supported through the Indian Health Service tribal program. And so they kicked in recurring new staffing dollars that were significant. Petersburg does not have that luxury. So what Phil's saying, I think, is absolutely true. Holding the line on program expansions and staff expansions is key to the sustainability of the new PMC, and making a more energy efficient building on the plant side is going in the right direction. But both of those, energy efficiency, building systems, and not growing staff, those are key to the sustainability of this particular project.
You remember Mucci, you had another,
No, thank you.
any other assembly members have comments? Going back to resolution 2021-04, I went back to that meeting and listened to it, and I was the only assembly member that voted against it. And, you know, I'm still kind of skeptical about the funding. I mean, in my personal life, if I am gonna buy a boat or build a shop or build a house, I have all the money lined up before I do it. Of course, that's a personal thing. I want to, you know, if I start on a project, I want to finish it. And my concern with this is we talk about the stacked funding. We've got the $8 million from Murkowski, and $20 million is held up in the treasury. When we were just back in Washington, DC, they didn't say yes or no that you're going to get that, but there was, you know, what happens if you only get half? Well, then we get half, I guess. But the state capital budget for this year is going to be very minimum. You know, and then the finance committee told me that recently. So the $20 million in the black, and that stack figure is, I wouldn't expect to see it personally. As far as the Peltola money, 15 million and the 15 to 30 from Murkowski, you know, maybe that's an option. So it just doesn't seem prudent to move forward and start something, and then, you know, like you say, if we get to into phase one or get the pad made and the utilities in, then yeah, we have a nice big rock pad. But if the funding doesn't come through in the future, then how do you finish the project? And I totally understand the condition. You know, I don't totally understand the condition, but I'm pretty good friends with Mike Boggs, and I've had some conversations with him. And our facility we have now is in real tough shape. I mean, that's a given, but so this is a tough situation, but I just wanted to put in my 2 cents on that. And as far as this resolution, and that's what we're doing now, and well, 3 weeks ago, it was brought to our attention that this was almost the bid was almost let on this. So we had some conversations and talked through it, and that's why we have this resolution we're going to address under new business as to what the parameters are in the assembly involvement, whether that gets amended, whether it passes, I don't know, but so far we've, you know, done what 2104 said. We phased it. I mean, I've got don't know if the communication, if there was a communication gap between the entities, you know, the PMC and the administration at the borough, but we need to make that a very open, clear communication, and the public needs to be involved. They need to be totally aware of what we're doing. This is the biggest project this community has ever seen. Even if it is only 65 million or a total of 85, I mean, what's our other biggest project? 15 million. So, and I'm appreciate your report, and thank you for enlightening us on this type of process. This contract manager, general contractor, and questions or input from assembly members before we move on. Okay, thank you, Mr. Hofstetter and Mr. Forwald, for your presentation, and Mr. Roundtree. Do we need to take a little break before we move forward, or how's the assembly feel? We just bang out a couple more things and then take a break. Okay, we'll move forward. I won't take long, the mayor's report. Only one item here today, National Marine Fisheries Service public hearing on threatened listing determination for the sunflower sea star under the Endangered Species Act. The National Marine Fisheries Service will hold a public hearing in the Borough Assembly Chambers on Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, from 4 to 7 p.m. Related to their March 16th, 2023 proposed rule to list the sunflower sea star as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Written public comments are due no later than May 15th, 2023, and may be submitted via the federal e-rulemaking portal at www.regulations.gov. And then there's some NOAA stuff. This is all on the website. It'd be easier for you probably to just look at it and get it than to think you're going to write it down if I'm reading it to you. But for further information, contact Sadie Wright, National Marine Fisheries Service, Alaska Region, 907-586-7630, or Sadie Wright at NOAA.gov. And that's my mayor's report, and turn it over to Manager Giesbrecht.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The 2023 Junior Firefighter Program just wrapped up. Thank you to the 3 students that stuck it out to the end. Aaron Hankins, congratulations. He has completed his EMT2 certification. He is one of 5 active EMT2s in the community. As Aaron mentioned, we had tested the sirens on March 29th. After discovering some damaged wiring, the rest of the tests went very well. Fire department will be holding a family day, fun day on April 22nd. Please bring your family and come hang out with the volunteers. Firefighters, EMTs, and search and rescue personnel will be showing and presenting equipment, and Papa Bears will be providing root beer floats. Using funds raised by the chili competition, the police department, harbor department, and the volunteers have come together to purchase a night vision camera for the harbor security boat. This will allow the boat to safely be used for nighttime response, whether responding to distressed vessels, police nighttime operations, or fire, EMS, or SAR missions. Thank you to Chief Kerr and the SAR crew for the research into this equipment. Thank you to Petersburg Rotary and the many community members that assisted with the Sandy Beach cleanup event on April 8th. Your involvement is greatly appreciated. Parks and Rec is partnering with the U.S. Coast Guard and Petersburg School District to promote the Kids Don't Float campaign for kids age 5 to 12 on Friday, April 21st, 8 to 11 at the Community Center. Information and registration are available on the Parks and Rec website. Power and Light and Public Works responded to storm damage on Easter Sunday. Power and Light successfully replaced 2 cross arms on the Mitkoff Highway to restore power to customers except for Crystal Lake Hatchery. On Monday, staff continued storm damage work at the end of the distribution line, was able to clear 2 spans of line of downed trees, repair and straighten 2 poles, and restore power to the hatchery by approximately 4 p.m. Storm also brought down several trees on the slope behind Public Works. This has further emphasized the need to do some detailed stability analysis at the Public Works site. Borough's proposed FY24 budget will include some funding for this study. In March, the library had a water leak in our telecommunications conduit. It caused groundwater to back up into the facility. Problem has been resolved by AT&T. Thank you to everyone at Public Works who helped find a timely solution to the problem. Over 100 people participated in the Build a Better World Challenge. Over 65,000 minutes were read. Winners were able to choose a local nonprofit to donate to as their prize. The winners were Jody Severson, $500 for Humanity in Progress, and Quincy Rice to Petersburg Humane Association, the 7th grade science underwater ROV program, and the Friends of Petersburg Libraries. This program is sponsored by the Friends of Petersburg's Libraries. Upcoming programs at the library, including Kathy Russo, a master basket weaver from Ketchikan, who will give an artist slideshow and presentation, followed by a 3-day basket weaving class. Lisa Ceramic Adams is teaching a series of art classes for adults, and Orrin Pearson will be holding a writing workshop. These programs are funded by the Alaska Community Foundation's Healthy Communities Grant and the Petersburg Art Education Endowment. Harbor staff attended the annual spring meeting with the U.S. Coast Guard Captain of the Port, Captain Darwin Jensen, and fellow Borough Department and Waterways Agency representatives. Topics included emergency response, homeland security, marine communication, tourship activity, drug trafficking, cybersecurity, and personnel changes. Community appreciates the annual in-person information exchange with Sector Juneau and the 17th District Administration. Our tourship schedule has firmed up. Currently, we're showing 111 stops, with the first stop on May 8th. We have 2 new vessels, the Hanseatic Nature, which is 456 feet, 200 to 230 passengers, and Star Breeze, 522 feet, that are both affiliated with the cruise line agencies Lindblad, each stopping a couple of times this year. Rockin' Road was successful in dredging and disposing of sediment in the Middle Harbor. They are working to replace the damaged section of the water line and reroute it away from the original area in hopes of reducing the siltation. Harbor Department greatly appreciates their efforts completing this before the environmental window closure and April's set of minus tides. Sanitation Supervisor Aaron Merle is working with disposal company Clean Harbors to set a date for the borough's upcoming household hazardous waste event. And the borough's solid waste disposal contract with Republic Services expires this summer. And we are currently discussing a renewal of this contract. Early figures they have provided indicate a disposal rate increase of approximately 25%, with annual 5.5% increases thereafter. This scale of increase is well outside of what was anticipated during the last rate study. And if we are not able to find a better option, we may need to look at additional rate increases to help offset the added costs. Southeast Alaska Solid Waste Authority, or CSWA, met on April 5th and is going to be looking at ways to reduce waste disposal costs for the region. Nolly Commission is offering a regional solid waste planning grant that CSWA will likely be applying for. This would facilitate some in-depth study of regional solid waste issues and hopefully point the way towards reducing or at least controlling the cost of solid waste disposal in Petersburg and other Southeast communities. Totemic Solutions, an organic waste and resource recovery firm, recently visited Petersburg to look at opportunities for organic waste disposal alternatives in the community. They're having some discussions with PIA about composting operations and putting together a presentation on potential organic waste solutions for Petersburg. With our disposal costs set to sharply increase soon, we will certainly take a close look at this and any similar opportunities that may arise. With assistance from the Streets Department, building maintenance crew replaced a failed set of beach access stairs on North Nordic Drive. And the live scan installer company will be sending their folks to town on May 4th or 5th for the installation and training on the new fingerprint system. We've been waiting for their installer to get here to do all the tech work, and we're close. And last, Sergeant Harris will be attending the U.S. Coast Guard sponsored active shooter drill hosted in Ketchikan. The drill will actually take place on one of the Alaska state ferries. And that's it.
Any questions of the manager on his report this evening? Okay, thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. I think we're going to take a 5-minute break and stretch our legs, and a drink of water or whatever is necessary, and then we'll come back 5 to 10 minutes. As soon as the assembly gets back in their seats, we'll start over. Back. So we should
All right, everybody.
reconvene. I got it. Reconvene the meeting. Okay, have your seats, please. You're going to stay. Next item on the agenda, unfinished business. Ordinance 2023-04, the only item under unfinished business, I believe. Nope, a couple of them. And it's for adjusting the fiscal year 2023 budget for known changes. This is the third and final reading. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its third reading.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, I believe, seconded by Member Lynn. Member Newman.
I make a motion to increase the amount of the expenditure under number 7 from the Harbor Enterprise Fund account to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers from $635,000 to $1 million for harbor dredging in ordinance number 2023-04.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made. There's a second to add funding, and I think we probably all heard how hard the digging was when they were dredging, so, and that's what drove everybody's cost up, so. Any other input? Member Lynn?
Just a question, is money available? Do we have it in hand?
Harbor Master Wallen.
We have the money.
And does that
In our
offset
enterprise
something else we were gonna do with it? Does this that
My God,
increase?
there's a long list of projects, so, but this is the highest priority. We got to be able to tie boats up, so. yeah.
Thank you.
And when are they intending to start again this fall?
Yes, the environmental window actually opens October 1. They're trying to get, they're advocating for an early start. So may start sometime in September, but probably not much before that.
Okay, we're voting on item 7 to increase $635,000 to $1 million for dredging operations in the South Harbor. So is there any other discussion on the amendment? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Okay, the amendment passes unanimously, and now that brings us back to the main motion as amended. Is there any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff, Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2023-04 passes unanimously and it's as amended in its third and final reading. That brings us to ordinance 2023-05. This is an ordinance updating chapter 17.02 of the municipal code entitled Safety Code Adoption. It's the second reading. If approved in 3 readings, this ordinance will update the local amendment to the International Building Code snow load requirement, and 2, adopt a local amendment to the International Residential Code for new installation values. The Assembly unanimously approved this ordinance in its first reading. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this or approve this ordinance in its second reading.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Newman, seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion. Seeing none, will clerk call the roll?
Scott,
Yes.
Bob, Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to new business. The first item under new business is a resolution 2023-04. A resolution approving the hospital board site selection for a new hospital facility, authorizing the hospital board's submission of rezoning and some subdivision applications for the site, and authorizing the hospital board to proceed with contracting with Dawson Construction for pre-construction services under a construction manager general contract agreement. If approved, this resolution will approve a site for a new hospital facility, authorize the hospital board to submit applications to rezone, plat a major subdivision, and vacate portions of Fram, Joa, and North 12th Streets, and authorize the hospital board to proceed with contracting with Dawson Construction for pre-construction services. I'd entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Kinsinger. Discussion. Member Lynn.
I have a number of comments here since I've spent considerable amount of time helping work on this resolution. First, I want to go back and talk about something that Mr. Farnwell talked about, is that I agree with the idea that we need to get to a shovel-ready project. And although we're not there, this really helps us get there. For all our own projects here in the borough, we're always looking to get to shovel-ready, looking for more funding. And so this is really just, to me, more of the same that we try to do for our own projects. I want to go back to something else that all along, Mr. Hofstadter talked about working on a contract, working on architectural, with architectural firms and so forth, and putting projects out to bid. I didn't see some of the problems that would come up, and neither did anybody else, and because neither has anybody else until just recently. There was nothing here that was ever hidden. I think if you go back to our records, it's all been on the service that Mr. Hofstadter has talked about. So what we have here is a package that allows the hospital to go forward. I want to talk about a couple items on here. There's nothing here that can't be stopped at some point down the line. And so I think it's reasonable to go forward with what we have. I think that the people that are in place, I have tremendous respect for some of the talents we have here, and I think that's what we really, we have the talents on board. We need to move forward. Somebody made a comment about public process. I totally agree with that. And I think that the hospital board and Mr. Hofstadter have some things in mind to increase that public involvement process as they get more architectural information here down the road. And I applaud them for doing that. And I think that'll become much more visible here in another month or so. No, all the money is not available, but I think that what we have in this resolution is the protection of the borough as best we possibly can. Could we stop the project? Absolutely. Could we wait, and say, we'll go back and put out to the people and revise the whole hospital part of our basic document that we have? Yeah, we could, but that's 2 to 3 years down the road. And I think we've got enough talent and we've got enough progress. So I'm supportive of moving forward at this point. I'm comfortable with what we have to date. Thank you.
Other input?
Yeah, I'd like.
Member Fine Walsh. Sorry.
Well, I have some reservations about this, this resolution. I think really one of the things we're grappling with here is, on the one hand, we have the hospital board who is semi-independent. And then on the other hand, we have the assembly, which is representing the community here. And the question is, how do you balance those two separate entities, and the authorities and obligations that each has? I guess reading through this, one of my concerns, for instance, is what happens if the hospital board, being authorized to proceed with execution of this contract with Dawson, being authorized to administer, supervise, and manage all aspects of the performance under the contract, butts up against, a new assembly here that's, completely against the construction of a new hospital? What if suddenly we just have 7 votes that say no, and the first time Dawson says, hey, this is our guaranteed maximum price, or, we need to amend it, or this is not going to be possible. And they just get 7, everybody on the assembly says no. If I were Dawson in a situation like that, I would be pretty upset. And then you would potentially have litigation on your hands. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm kind of wondering if it might be worth making an amendment to the effect that, a no guaranteed maximum price amendment or notice to proceed for any service that does not constitute pre-construction service shall be executed without authorization of the assembly, and the assembly shall not withhold authorization for reasons deemed arbitrary and capricious, or something along those lines. I would like to see, if the assembly wants to be a part of the negotiating process for this project, I think that's reasonable. But I worry that, we can get pretty deep into this with Dawson, and then for, political reasons, the assembly might pull the plug. So those are my concerns, I guess. I'd like to hear what other people have to say, and, depending what other people might, what other input there might be, I may come back and propose an amendment. Thanks.
Okay, so that isn't in the form of a motion to amend?
No, I might as well talk about it now. Yeah, I'll
We'd have to
propose,
have the-
I'll propose a motion, to amend the resolution, along the lines of what I just
This is
discussed.
section 4.
This would be
of the-
section,
of the
yeah,
whereas,
item 4.
Therefore be it resolved.
Yeah, item 4 under, therefore be it resolved to add language. preventing the assembly from denying, an amendment to the guaranteed maximum price for reasons that are arbitrary or capricious. I feel like there should be some requirement for the assembly to, to explain why they don't agree, should that be the case in the future. No.
So can you simplify that, Clerk Thompson, or to add the language, do you understand where Member Fine Walsh is, what he's trying to do?
I do. Can this assembly tie the hands of a future assembly?
Decision we make doesn't affect an assembly next year
Right.
or 6 months from now.
So I'm not real sure that the amendment, we
So
can still make
the
it.
resolution would no longer be active under a new assembly. It,
Would certainly be active.
They can change it.
but they would be able to go back and change it.
Yeah, but just because we approve it today, if we do approve it today and, the next assembly could change, just throw it out the window. So, Member Kensinger.
I have a question and I may need help from the clerk. If you could, specifically in the charter, we have the hospital board, which is a duly elected board of the citizens of Petersburg. And they have specific powers that are outlined in the charter. And it's very specific language. It says they're independent. So my concern with an amendment like that would be, would we be going against the charter by adding the amendment that Representative Fine Walsh has proposed?
I can't answer that question right now. I'm sorry.
Through the mayor, I can maybe add some clarity on that. The hospital is a component unit of the borough. And there is language in the charter that says the hospital should be allowed to operate autonomously. That's all given. But at no point does the charter or our ordinances address building a brand new building. It doesn't come up. There's some purchasing issues, but nowhere does it say, this is a set of rules you should follow if you need a new hospital. So it's not really spelled out. It is, and unfortunately, that's just how it is. What this assembly votes on today can be changed by yourselves or a future assembly. I mean, and that is, the autonomous portion that's in the charter gets overridden by the fact that the assembly has the right to approve in this kind of a project. And again, the charter, I don't think, just never really dealt with the fact of an $85 million project. It just doesn't deal with that.
So if that was in the form of a motion, then we need a second. So, reading this resolution, it's, much more detailed than the resolution 2021-04, gives the hospital permission to move ahead with its pre-construction, but it also gives the assembly has to approve certain things. So that communication between the hospital board and the assembly is now there. We just need to follow it. So in my opinion, I guess I don't totally understand why we would need to change, but if that's in the form of a motion, we need a second before we discuss it and vote on it.
Well, if I may
Yeah.
elaborate on that, thank you. I agree with Borough Clerk Thompson here that it's true that that form of amendment wouldn't really solve this problem. And I think for, a big part of this is this style of contract we're entering into with Dawson, where we're kind of kicking the conversation about price down the road, and who knows what's going to happen then. Frankly, it seems like it would make more sense to avoid the possibility that a future assembly is going to change its mind or go back on this and screw up things with the board in Dawson. That maybe we should just get rid of item 4 entirely, or somehow get the assembly to approve, or cede that authority to the board and then step away, so that we don't have to worry about future assemblies stepping in and changing this, I mean, I'm not saying that we should make this decision right now, but I do think it might be better, if we are gonna build a hospital, if we're gonna go with Dawson, if we're gonna adopt this contract style, I think we should make the decision now and then live with it, as opposed to kind of creating this potential for uncertainty further down the road. And that might be able to be accomplished by getting rid of number 4. And I know, a big part of the reason that's there is because people are uncomfortable about the cost of this hospital and the fact that the hospital board, it might run away with Dawson, and pretty soon we're looking at, $100 million construction project. But, I mean, it is the goal here is to have a new hospital. And I don't believe there's a cheap way to do that. And frankly, I don't want to hamstring the hospital board. I think it's important that the community, the Petersburg community here, kind of be on board. And I believe, people have expressed, I know it's a contentious issue, but for the most part, people do seem to want a hospital here. And again, I don't think we necessarily need to make that decision right now, but I think it might be wiser for the assembly, to kind of vote it up or down and then step away, and let the board do its job instead of trying to micromanage them.
If you would want to amend this resolution and take item 4 out, you'd make a motion to that effect. And if we get a second, we'll discuss it and vote on.
Okay, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Is there a second? Motion fails with a lack of a second. So any other assembly members have comments on this resolution? Member Newman.
I'd just like to voice my support for Phil Hofstadter in the discussions I've had with him in multiple discussions. He's really done a fine job of assembling basically the A-team to move forward with. And you look at Petersburg, and look around this room. Look at how old we are. We're all aging. And the facility that we have is, well, I'm 58 years old and I was born in it. So, my wife works there. I've heard stories for 30 years about things breaking down, but sewer pipe in the office of the gal that runs the food section of it. So, there's just no doubt. I mean, and what's the number one thing that is most important to all of us? Our health. And we have a failing facility. So when I look at the size and the scope of this project, like other people have said, it's the biggest project in the history of Petersburg. It's a mountain. It's a mountain to climb. And how do you climb that mountain? You take the first step. None of us have built anything this big. A few of us have built some pretty big things, but not anywhere near that. And to sit here and second guess the people that have been working on this and have doubts and concerns about future monies. When I look at the one page that was up there at the cost of the projects for Alaska Native Medical Center, $220+ million. Church and Sitka, $200+ million. Where'd the money come from? It's all come from the same place, people. So I say we move forward with what we can. I like Jay's comment. We take what we get from the Treasury Department and we move forward with it. And if we end up with a big giant pad, well, we got a big giant pad. We take the next step and we move forward with it. But we have to move forward with confidence and conviction because that's the only way to complete this project. We have to, at some point, we have to take a leap of faith and believe in ourselves and trust each other and trust Phil and Jay that they've done their jobs. And we can take the next step. So thank you, Phil.
Any other input on this resolution? Member Marsh.
Thank you. I do appreciate all the information and discussion that has gone on not just this evening, but other places as well. For specifically this item number 4, no, the guaranteed maximum price, it is in the contract that was included in this packet numerous times that is a negotiated point between the owner and the contractor, if I understood it correctly. And so that is an important part. Where I see things surprising us financially are these cost overruns where unexpected delays or unexpected price increases surprise us. So I am with incredible reservation thinking this is a wise financial deal. And again, you know, I appreciate Mr. Hofstadter's commitment to keeping staffing about where it is, having a more energy efficient facility with the new facility. Energy costs have risen dramatically and I'm not seeing an end in sight. So I think much prudence is warranted for this.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to support this resolution, although I talked to a few folks over the last week who are nervous about this construction company that they're talking about. They're either wound up in a legal battle with them that's causing them to change the way they do business. That would be a big concern of mine. And while I know we need a hospital, I think I'd be really concerned that we don't end up in a lawsuit with this company, similar to what's going on with the contractor in town. And I've heard from several people over the last several days about we need to be cognizant that they've got a pretty deep legal bench and they're not afraid to use it. So, but I'll be voting for this resolution.
Any other comments by assembly members? You know, like I said earlier, I didn't vote for resolution 2021-04 because the funding wasn't there. I totally agree we need a new hospital. And the way this resolution is written, because of, you know, the discussion with our attorney and the, you know, the architect and the contract manager and Mr. Hofstadter. And if the money's not there, like it says in the resolution, they can't proceed. So we have to have a guarantee that they have the funding before they take each step in the process. And like Assembly Member Newman said, you know, if we don't take a step, you're not going to get anywhere up the hill. I still have reservations about this, but with this resolution, the way it's worded, I think the borough, the residents of this town are protected financially. That's one of my concerns. And one of the discussions we had when we found out this was almost ready to go out to bid, I asked our attorney, who owns this facility? And he said the borough. So we have to remember that. And it's all grant funded. We're not bonding for any of it. I hope, you know, with that, we don't encumber the residents of this community with some kind of a debt. So I will support this resolution tonight. But still, you know, kind of have reservation about it. So any other assembly members have comments? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Okay, on to the next resolution. That resolution passes, by the way, with a 6-1 vote with Assembly Member Marsh opposed. Next resolution for discussion tonight is resolution 2023-05, a resolution accepting $56,322 in grant funding from the state of Alaska, Department of Health and Social Services, for round 2 of the Healthy and Equitable Communities Grant Program. If adopted, this resolution will distribute this money and grant fees as follows: $28,736 for emergency Local emergency planning supplies, $17,177 for a microscope with a camera attachment for the PMC lab, and $10,409 for chain link fencing and safety materials for the Mort Fryer ball fields. So entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So move.
Second. Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes. Okay, the resolution passes unanimously and spread that state money around. Item C, a hospital board appointment. With approval of the assembly, I would like to appoint Jim Roberts to the vacant hospital board seat. The appointee will serve until October 3rd, 2023. Is there any opposition? Mr. Roberts is now on the hospital board. Member Lynn.
Yeah, if I can make a comment, Mr. Mayor, having sat in quite a few hospital board meetings, Mr. Roberts spent 3 years, I believe, previously on the hospital board. He brings a couple of skills to that. I've watched over the three or 4 years he's been on it. Very strong experience in contracting, and he brings a lot of financial skills to that board that I think are really, really important. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no opposition, Mr. Jim Roberts is appointed to the hospital board. Thanks for your willingness to serve. Item D, reschedule May assembly meetings. Borough administration requests to reschedule the assembly meetings from the month of May due to employee travel and consideration of the fiscal year 2024 budget ordinance. The meetings are currently scheduled for May 1st at noon and May 15th at 6 p.m. We request rescheduling both meetings for 1 week later, May 8th at noon and May 22nd at 6 p.m. This temporary reschedule will leave 2 weeks between the second meeting in May and the first meeting in June. We had some discussion about this today. Finance Director Tao and the Clerk Thompson. And one of the thoughts was maybe just move the May 1st meeting to May 2nd. And the reason the May 1st meeting was asked to be changed was because Finance Director Tao will not be available. So might be handy to have her in the room when we talk about the budget. So that's just some thought. So with that being said, do you want to stick with this proposed date or the asked date by the administration, or change that May 1st to May 2nd? That would be a noon meeting, correct?
Correct.
And then the second meeting, if I'm not mistaken from a conversation, could stay the same, May 15th?
Yes, it could. If you decide to change from May 1st to May 2nd at noon, then the 15th would stay the same at 6 p.m.
I'll make that motion. For May 2nd at noon.
And I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, so we'll call the roll for Thompson, please. Sorry.
Okay. Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna, Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the meeting rescheduled. One of them anyway. Item E, fiscal year 2024 budget work session. Manager Giesbrecht and Finance Director Tao request the assembly choose a date and time to hold a work session on the proposed borough budget for fiscal year 2024. So I've got one request that if we do pick a date, that it's after business hours, after work hours in the day. But other than that, I'm here until June. Jody, what your recommendation? We have this, try to have this before the first reading, May 2nd.
It would be nice, I think, anytime maybe between tomorrow and the 26th. I leave town the 27th.
How about we just tag it on to the end of this meeting?
Okay, I'm not quite ready yet. Tomorrow night I would be ready.
Member Kinzinger?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, could I propose just for discussion purposes, the 24th at 6 P.M. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Does that work for people? Does that work for the administration?
I will,
Remember that?
won't be available till May, or at least the 1st of May. So pick any date you want. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that work for? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that's the date. Next Monday, I believe, right? No, 6 P.M. Okay, communications, correspondence received since March 30th, 2023. There are numerous letters there. They're available if you want to look at the website. So that's where you can find communication with the assembly. Assembly member discussion items. None listed. Assembly member comments. Any assembly members have comments this evening? No, seeing none. Recognitions. Any assembly meeting members have recognitions? No. Any staff have any recognition of anybody? No, everybody's getting tired. Okay, that brings us to the Board of Equalization. So we just keep the meeting going, correct, Clerk Thompson? We need the assessor, though, don't we? And let the other people that aren't interested in this depart.
Aaron, can you hear us? You can go home.
I'm having fun listening. I'm just sitting here in my hotel room, so nothing better to do.
Yeah. So the clerk left us Board of Equalization motions if you want to change something, and then the procedure, we have what we go through here. We have how many left this evening?
15 if you decide to handle the Borough one, 14 if not.
So we'll start with, before we get started, when we get down to item 58, that's John and Pam Jensen. That's my brother and his wife's property. There's numerous appeals by them. And when it comes to that time, I'd like to recuse myself from voting if there's any changes or being participated on that since it's direct family. So start with, let's see, number 38, Richard Weekon. Let me.
Actually, if you go to your agenda, because it should be on your agenda,
It's on the agenda.
okay, but the first thing is actually deciding whether or not the Burrell's case will be heard on the agenda.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. So the first issue we have as the Board of Equalization this evening is to deal with an appeal filed after the March 31st, 2023 deadline. Steve and Desi Burrell missed the filing deadline. They filed an appeal on April 10th, 2023. Borough Code states what time it has to be in. They have listed their reasons why that they missed the deadline. So Board of Equalization should decide whether to hear the Burrell's appeal or not. Has everybody read the information from Desi Burrell? So would this fit under one of the A through D motion? Member Kinster? I think we just have to vote whether we accept it or not, and they are on the agenda at the very end.
That's true. You're not deciding, yeah, you just have to decide whether they can appeal since they filed late.
Gotcha. Okay, so
I guess we have to have a vote. So we need a motion.
I make it the motion that we accept their appeal.
Second.
Discussion.
I have a, it's for medical and so forth. I can see that, but in reading the documents, I have a question there, and unfortunately, they're not here to talk about it, but there's a 7-day lag. It would seem to me that if they'd at least put a marker in there up front, right after they returned, they'd be in a much stronger position. And I asked our finance director if we've, to my recollection, all the time I've been here, we've never accepted one afterwards, but we've never had one medical before that I remember. And I got a question in my own mind about why a marker wasn't put in there up front, right after they got back. Because there is a week's lag in there, a 10-day lag, something like that. But go ahead.
I'm concerned if we're gonna set a precedent. I mean, I know medical is something you can't decide sometimes when you're gonna be gone. But yeah, I don't know if this would be a good idea for, the future. But any other input? So the vote is to whether we're gonna hear the Borough's appeal or not. So clerk, call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
No.
Jeff,
No.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas, Donna,
Yes.
Okay, we will hear the Borough's appeal at the end of the proceeding here. Okay, so one step. So we're looking for Richard Weekon, is that right? Okay, we have an appeal from Richard Weekon. Parcel 04-010-175 at Point Agassiz, Lot 20, the Ramstead Estate. This is his appeal from Richard Weekon representing himself. Assessed value, land 38,000, buildings none, total 38,900 was the assessed. What do you consider the market value? He said 28,000. He hasn't had any offers on the property. Have you ever he hasn't received any offers. Never been appraised. Not insured. Tax went up 75%. There are 0 services over there. I paid up a bit because it borders family land. There are several lots that have been on the market for years. So that is his reasoning for appealing the valuation.
very sorry. There's a process we kind of have to follow.
Oh,
So first
okay.
the appellant
I
talks.
should have taken the class again, huh?
Yeah, and they get 3 minutes and then the assessor and then, so we have to follow
Okay,
this
okay,
process.
okay.
Okay.
Not under Charles Wood. Okay, but is the appellant here? No, so he doesn't get to speak. So then we move to the assessor.
Mayor Jensen, I believe that, actually, by reading, Richard's, appeal, if he's not here, takes place of, the comments by the appellant. And then I'll follow up after that. You've already done that, run through it. His appeal is that the property went up 75% from what it was before. We changed a lot of the values over this year. We finally got enough sales and I was able to confirm information in this particular area. And I did raise a lot of those values. Again, I talked to the appellant. I gave him all of the information that I'd come up with on sales and talked to him. I sent him an email requesting that he respond to our conversation, and I have not heard back from him. it's my recommendation that there's no change and the property value remain $38,900.
Tell it, can't do a rebuttal because he's not here, so I would imagine the assessor doesn't have a rebuttal to his rebuttal since there isn't one. And are there any questions from the Board of Equalization? Member Kinsinger.
Since we have quite a few properties that we're going to be dealing with in the Thomas Bay area, when you said there was a lot of sales, in the past, there was no sales over there, so you couldn't establish what the value was, and now there have been a lot of sales.
We've been behind the curve on confirming a lot of sales over there. And I've been with this new subdivision, I've been, I guess, slow on getting confirmation. Again, it's always the same story that I tell every time. Alaska is a non-disclosure state. And it's sometimes it's difficult getting a lot of sales information and coming up with a matrix that's fair and equitable to everybody based on the information we get. We have enough information now this last year. We've gone through the whole borough and we've looked at land all over, and we made the decision that we had enough information to change the values and support them. And so that's why there's a substantial jump in the values.
So your characterization would be that we've been behind in assessing these properties in the past 4 or 5 years then?
Not these properties for 4 or 5 years, because the subdivision hasn't been there for 4 or 5 years, but a couple of years.
Thank you.
So does the Board of Equalization want to take any action? Any changes?
It says there's no improvements in their letter. Is there actually no improvements, or I thought there was a structure on there?
As far as January 1st, as far as I know, Scott, there's no improvements on the property. And when I believe Arnie went over there and looked and went around, I didn't see anything in the notes that said there were any improvements on it.
I was with them.
Yeah, you were driving.
It's on skids.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to get after Arnie on that. If you look in I'll take this as my rebuttal. I wrote a letter to Rick, and I can read it here. It's in your package, but I can read it really quickly. We have received your appeal in stating your concerns regarding the value of your property and the increase in assessed value of the property. In accordance with your request, we refuse the record of your property for accuracy and equity. Please be advised that properties are assessed based upon current market as required by Alaska statute 2949 or 29.45110. And that's a statute that we talked about the other day in one of the classes that I talked to you about. In order to follow the requirements of 29.45110, this office gathers and analyzes sales information of all types of properties to determine the measures of central tendency for assessment purposes. That's basically saying that I take all the sales, look at them, look at averages, look at dollars per square foot, dollars per acre, look at the median price of all those sales, look at the average sales price, and come up with a number. I'd like to say that it's using statistics that I learned a long time ago that I wasn't paying attention in class at, but I have younger people working for me now that can do all of that. I build a matrix for the values. This I feel will be feel that will be equitable for everybody. In reviewing, like we just talked, we've been behind the curve a little bit over there. And in reviewing the sales prices indicate that assessed value should go up. And he pointed out a number of listings of lots. These lots have been on the market for a long time, 500 to 600 days. These lots are in the $10,000 to $27,900 per acre range. the sales of the lots in the acre, sales of lots in the area of Rick's lot have been in the $8,000 to $12,778 range. He pointed out these other sales, saying they've been on the market for a long time, therefore my property shouldn't go up. My feeling is if those properties were valued lower, maybe they'd sell. That's the reason why they are in the market. I had gone through and looked at all of our sales information, and my average price per acre for those lots in that subdivision, taking into account there's a lot of unknowns as far as how damp they are not, how much land is above the median high tide line and everything else. There's a lot of variables. I chose a little bit lower number, and I used $6,550 per acre for the value of this lot. And again, I recommend no change.
Okay, is there a motion to,
I'll move to hold the value of that property the same as the assessor recommends.
I'll second.
discussion? Member Marsh?
I do have a question, through the mayor, may I, assessor? So you say you're behind on the assessments or gathering the sufficient data. Is that your company is behind, or would you explain that, please?
It's always nice to talk about your brief failings. During COVID, I was originally under the assumption and did some early research, and I thought that the market would slow down, that property values would not increase, that people would be staying at home and not doing anything. And because people weren't working, property values would not go up. As the appraiser, it's always hard to admit that I was wrong. And property values have gone up. They've gone up dramatically. The economy in real estate transactions throughout the state and Petersburg has continued to climb, and people are buying properties. As such, as I was watching the market, I was thinking that property values were not going to go up as much as they did until the abundance of information and sales convinced me that I was in fact wrong. So yes, I'm behind. I'm going to blame it on COVID. You know, sometimes you make a decision and you want to see things. I certainly, when this all started during the COVID and the times leading up to today, I certainly didn't want to jump and say, oh, well, you know, property values are going to go up. I've got one sale or two sales. I wanted to wait until I could see what was happening. And in fact, those one or two sales just kept going higher and higher and higher as other sales followed. I'm still feel like I'm in this particular area. We've got a lot of appeals over there. In this particular area, I still tend to be a little bit conservative. There's a lot of variables on these lots, and I don't want to jump in and the first year that I raised all the values, push it as high as I possibly could.
Thank you.
I hope that helped.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Donna,
No.
Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Scott,
Passes with the 5-2 or 6-1, I can't recall.
6-1.
Okay, so we go on to first appeal by Brandy Tinas, this, the appellant. Do I need to read their appeal?
If you'd like, I can do it.
There you go. Thank you.
I'll take you off the hook tonight. I talked to Brandy. I'll leave that for a minute. The assessed value of her property is 74.1 on land, 215.2 for a total of 289.3. She says that she considers the property to be worth 66.2, 79.3 for 245.5. She says it's insured for 397.2, and she said she bought it for $285,000. Her appeal is this house was purchased only 7 years ago for $285,000. The market and the economy are headed down, not up. The value of this house has not gone up 18%. That is her appeal. I talked to her. So that's her appeal. My rebuttal is, I talked to the appellant. We discussed the direction of the economy. We did not agree at all. I calculated the increase to be 16%, not 18%. I reviewed 9 sales in the area of downtown Petersburg here and calculated the average per square foot of those 9 sales to be $244.62 with a range of $163.62 to $284.57 per square foot. That is the average and range per square foot of the living area only of these sales. It's sort of a broad and loose calculation method, but it tells what people are buying as living area, and it's what to look at. The subject is valued at $179.14 a square foot. It's within the range. I'm recommending no change in the value. That is $179.14 is the average per square foot value of the subject property, living area, as compared to the other sales that I came up with.
Any questions? Motion. Positive, entertain a motion to grant the appeal. You have to make a motion in the positive?
The last motion was to hold the value, which is not a negative.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll make a motion to hold the value as assessor recommends.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second for the property at Borough, Tinas at 1017 Valkyrie Street. Does the assembly have any questions? Or we're going to motion? Okay, discussion. Clerk, call the roll.
Mark,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, next property. Trying to make this easy.
The next property is by Brandy again.
1309 South Nordic Drive.
Yes, PL 2023-50. Again, I talked to Brandy about this property. The current assessed value is 32.5 for the land, 32,500, 163,300 for a total assessed value of 195.8. She said she bought it in 2006 for 135,000. She says it's insured for 237.9. She said that she had it appraised in the past 2 years for 240,000. Her appeal is no improvements have been made, need a lot of work. The current market direction of the economy and interest rates do not reflect an 18.6% increase in value. I recalculated and looked at the numbers. I think it's closer to 16%. That is her appeal. My rebuttal is I talked to the appellant. We disagree on the direction of the economy. Greatly disagree. I calculated the increase in value at 16%. I reviewed, again, 9 sales in the downtown area and calculated the average sales price at $244.62 per square foot of living area, with a range in living area per square foot of $163.62 to $284.57 per square foot of living area. The subject is below the range at an average of $134.68 per square foot. I would recommend no change in value.
Questions from the board?
I'll make a motion that we keep
Hold the value.
hold the value. Thank you very much.
Second.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Donna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Yes.
Scott, Thomas,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jeff, Bob,
Yes.
Appeal, assessor value stays the same. And we're on to another parcel by Brandy Tina, so. Assessor.
This is
Nipkow
appeal-
Highway.
This is appeal 2023-51, again by Brandy at 303 Mitkoff Highway A and B. Brandy appealed. The land is currently at $28,300. The improvements at $201,000 for a total value of $229,300. She acquired the property in 2014 for $215,000. She thinks she says she feels the land is worth $25,300. The improvements at $167,400 for a total of $192,700. How much is the property insured for? $495,800. Her appeal. This is an increase of 19% from last year. We are going into a recession with the interest rates booming. There have been no improvements in the last several years. This year, the largest construction companies started building for their new location. This is not ideal for residences. My response. I talked to the appellant. We disagreed on the direction of the economy. I calculated the increase in value at 16%. Again, I reviewed Again, I reviewed 9 sales and calculated the price per square foot at 163.62 to 244.62 per square foot of living area. The subject, it's horrible when you can't read your own notes. I had 10 sales, I'm sorry, that I looked at for this one because of the size of the property. The range was $163.62 to $284.57. I calculated the square footage of the subject. Its value is $182.85 of living area. It's above the average, but within the range of dollars per square foot of gross living area. Her comment about the industrial area behind it. Rockin' Road has cleared a lot behind where this house is. It's a large level gravel pad or lot now. Prior to Rockin' Road putting in their pad, the whole area around that house is an industrial area. It's actually, I think the Rockin' Road pad is a lot nicer than some of the other properties around the house. I didn't think that the comment that she made about being in that location was a detriment, considering the value, and I would recommend no change.
Questions? Entertain a motion.
Yeah, see if I can remember it. I entertain a motion that we keep the property assessment the same.
I'll second.
Discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Thomas,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Donna, Mark,
Yes. Okay, the next appeal will be Legacy Lot 7, so. The assessor. You want to read the appellants? I can.
I can do that, but I'd like to step back here and grab a bottle of water first. Or Jody will get one for me. Thank you, Jody. This is appeal. All of the rest of the appeals tonight are John and Pam Jensen's appeals of their properties over at Point Agassiz.
I see it, excuse me, I see it listed different JHD Real Estate. Is that the partnership of the owners of the land? And then was there?
In this particular case, I
just noticed there's two things listed differently.
it changes throughout. This one is on lot 7.
oh wait, I thought we were doing number 55. Are we looking at number 58?
What number?
Should be doing number 55, huh?
I'm lost. I'm sorry, let me get organized here.
So.
I think it is.
Well, we're just not following the agenda necessarily from the beginning. We're following the list, but it doesn't really matter. As long as we get them all done.
Okay, well, I don't see 55 listed anywhere before 58, so maybe it's somewhere else on the list of appeals.
50
on the.
I
think
believe 55.
The reason is it's the
50
corporation or whatever it is, and so I put it at the beginning of those. Because there are some that are personal, John and Pam, and then there are some that are the JHD real estate.
First one I have in my package is 58.
Okay.
Has everybody got 58 as the top one in
55
their,
is
in their
down under
package?
item U.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. But 58 is the first one. Want to make sure we're on track. Okay, Professor.
Okay, so this is John and Pam Jensen. It's appeal 2023, number 58. The assessed value is 37.7. They acquired the property in 12 of 22. They say that they paid $41,490 for it. They considered the value to be $41,490. Their appeal is there is an error or omission on the assessment of the property for the following reasons. 118% increase in assessed value is excessive. 5.77 acres, property coverage 65% by tide, 17 plus by large slough and storm surge, very limited saltwater access on tide flats. The designated and platted access road was built in place in 2017 and was part of the sales agreement in selling all lots. And the road does not increase the value of the property. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no Petersburg Borough services. This is remote recreational property, therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average. We do not agree with the 118% increase in value placed on lot 7. There is no justification or basis for such an increase. I did an analysis of nine seems to be my number tonight, of 9 lots of sales in this subdivision. And in my analysis, I came back and worked them out based on a value per acre. And my value is $6,650. And that's how I valued the lot. That is below the value that the Jensens put on the lot at $41,490. We're going to be talking about a lot of these lots. There's a couple of things here, and I believed I mentioned it in one of the classes that we talked about. And in addition to being fair and equitable, the idea is to value properties for assessment purposes so that everybody's treated the same. It's like I said, a lot of these lots have pluses and minuses. In looking at them, I used all the lots all the way through to come up with my average value. On average, I'm about 90% of the average sale price for my assessed value. And that's the number I used almost all the way through. There's one exception in here, and when we get to it, I'll talk about it. But that's how I valued all the lots. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Jensen think the lot's worth more than what I assessed it for. There could be an argument made that the appellant thinks it's worth more, you should value it more. But in my case, looking at all these, I think it's more important that we value all of the lots the same for ad valorem purposes when we go through this subdivision, and that's what I did. And so my value is 37.7. It's lower than what what Mr. and Mrs. Jensen think. I understand that the property values jumped quite a bit over there. It was a new subdivision with new sales, and we finally got enough information, and the sales came out of all the sales I got to indicate a value that's jumped from the prior assessed value. I'm recommending 37.7 for the assessed value.
I have a question. So I am a property owner over there.
I
have been
know.
for a long time. So you did say that you're valuing the acreage the same as what Wright Beacons is, right? Is that right? Or all of them?
For Rutherford subdivision, I valued them all the same.
All the same?
Yeah, all the
It's
same.
Equal across the board?
Across the board. I know that, some people are saying, I mean, this is more background information. Some people were saying well, there's land below the mean high water mark. There's land above the high water mark. The land floods, the land doesn't flood. The land's got trees, it doesn't have trees. You know, there's a lot of variables over there. Does it have road access? Does it not have road access? I looked at all of that and thought for assessment purposes, going forward from where we are today, after the big jump, that I should have a number that I could support in my valuation. It's based on sales. I agree that there are some lots over there that have been on the market for quite a while. They're listed for quite a bit more than what we've got them assessed for, and they're listed for more than the sales. And so to answer your question, Scott, yes, I valued them all the same.
No, I'm just saying that, I know what I paid at least 12 years ago. And I've always felt like that the valuations were low over there. And so now that you're just kind of bringing them up to probably even still, I think, in my opinion, lower than they should be. Anytime you get an increase, people are going to be upset. So I think that's what's going on.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me that the part of the, at least with respect to this property we're talking about right now, you know, the 41,490 consideration paid was due in part to finance the construction of a road, you know, and I kind of, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm seeing that in the, in their appeal, you know, and it strikes me that, you know, maybe you have a number of properties and the cost to construct a road to each property is going to be the same regardless of the value of the property. If you want a road that accesses all those properties, you know, you're going to pay to get that road put in, and that's going to be reflected. But once the road is there, it seems like some properties, you know, I mean, obviously they're all going to benefit from the access the road provides, but some seem like they would be worth more and some less, you know, based, like you're saying, kind of on the you know, then, you know, looking at the aspects of the properties itself, whether one property is mostly submerged or one property is mostly unusable for another reason. So I guess I'm looking at that, and that seems like a pretty reasonable justification for the fact, you know, that the consideration paid was, you know, admittedly higher than your assessment here. Yeah, you know, I think it's not unreasonable.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we maintain the value that the assessors recommended.
Second.
Mark? Oh, sorry. Jeff?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
Thomas?
No,
Bob?
Yes.
$23.59.
58.
That was 58.
That was 58.
That one was,
That paper list had 55 as the first Jensen appeal.
so we're on 59 now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Appeal 2023-59, John and Pam Jensen. Lot 10, Ramsett subdivision. The assessed value is 22.5. The appellant feels that the market value is $5,000. And this is one case where I agree with them. This was a smaller lot. An easement was given for public access on this lot for all the other property owners. I think the marketability and future value of the lot is diminished because of this. It does provide utility to everybody else, but it's not on the market like all the other lots. And in this particular case, I agree with the appellant, and it's my recommendation that, that the, value be, accepted at $5,000.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we accept the appraiser's recommendation.
Second.
Clerk call roll.
Scott,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Jeff,
We're on to appeal number 2023-60.
Again, this appeal is by John and Pam Jensen. It's lot 11 Ramstead. The assessed value is 87.6. They feel that the value of the land is 73.3. Their appeal reads, there is an error or omission on the assessment of this property for the following reasons. 118% increase in assessed value is excessive. The lot is 13.41 acres, 4.35 acres of uplands, 9.06 of accreted, and he says not buildable. Accreted land property coverage, 35% of uplands is affected by tides at 17 feet plus, large sloughs, storm surge, not buildable, very limited saltwater access to the tide flats. The designated and platted access road was built in place in 2017 and a small extension in 2022 and was part of the sales agreement in selling lots 8 to 11. It is not private driveway, and the road does not increase the value of the property. Some trees have been cleared for safety and to make a way for a small cabin. There are no Petersburg Borough services. This is a remote recreational property, therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg. In determining the increase in valuation, this is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average. We do not agree with the 118% increase of value placed on lot 11. There is no justification or basis for such an increase. Lot 11 was sold for 73.3, which is a 16.5% less than the new assessed value at 87.3. My response again is that I've got my lot sales with the average sale price I put on them at $6,550 per acre. Lot 11 sold from the partnership, which Mr. and Mrs. Jensen are partners in, to themselves. And that was the sale price that they reported. I actually put that sale price in my matrix with all of the other sales that I came up with. That I had just gotten this sale. I didn't have this one before. I'm assuming it's correct. And I put it into my calculations and it really didn't change where I thought the value should be for assessment purposes. My recommendation is no change, that the value should remain $87,600.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm looking at the right photo of this, and I mean, I live in a remote property and I live on a tide flat, and I definitely wouldn't build out on the beach just because anything you build out on the beach isn't going to be there the next time you have a big storm. And it appears to me from this, at least from this photo, that it, and what Mr. Jensen said, that a large part of this property is in a tide flat. So my question is, was all the property valued at that rate? I mean, because a large portion of that's unbuildable.
They advertised all these lots, with the gross area, including the accreted area. When I did my calculations, I included the accreted area, to come up with my number for the $6,650. If you just take the area that's not including the accreted area, you're running about $20,000 an acre on the sale prices. For all the sale prices that I had for the waterfront properties. To answer your question, I took all the sales, averaged them all out based on the gross areas and came up with my number and my assessed value, on average for all the lots, whether they were down on the waterfront or not. I felt that, the benefit of the waterfront came from their advertising of the additional accreted area as compared to the back lots that were smaller. So, you know, it sort of averaged out. Is it exact? Probably not. But basically that's how I did it. I did look at their sale. I felt that it was, didn't get a chance to talk to them. But it's a sale basically between themselves and themselves. They took the lot out of the partnership that they were major partners in and put it in their own name. They paid the partnership.
Questions?
So just for clarification, you are taking the number of sales, and 9 seems to be your magic number.
Yes.
In a given subdivision or area in the borough. You're not doing a borough-wide average of sales? Would you clarify that for me, please?
I use only sales within Ramstead subdivision.
Okay.
For this analysis.
Okay, thank
I
you.
didn't go anyplace else. This is a unique subdivision. It's a new subdivision. It's got sales just since they recorded the plat. And I used those sales that I could confirm for coming up with my numbers. I didn't go outside. I didn't go over to Schoolhouse subdivision where Scott is, or go to any of the other lots that are going down the road the other way, away from Ramstead subdivision. I used only sales in the subdivision.
Thank you.
I'd just like to make the comment that I don't think accretable land has any value. That's just my opinion.
You know, there's a lot of accreted land in front of Sandy Beach too.
What can you do with it? Look at it.
Get a core permit, you can fill it. You know, the thing is, Scott, is he advertised all the lots with the gross area. That's how they were sold. They weren't sold as a smaller lot with a big accreted area. They were all sold with the gross area of the whole lot. And the accreted area is part of what they were selling, whether they had title to it or they could use it or not. That's how they were presented. And so that's what I used when I did my analysis. Whether it has value or not, I just used the same method that they were selling the lots.
You're saying you're basing it off of market value then?
Yeah, I was using market value. All of my sales are in the subdivision, in Ramstead subdivision.
I make a motion that we accept the price, the valuation of the property as the assessor recommends.
Second.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Thomas,
No.
Jeff,
Yes.
and Donna.
No.
So that motion fails.
Well, then we have to make one of these motions to.
You'll have to, I guess, do another motion to To
Recommend
accept,
something.
yeah, to recommend something, to accept their valuation. I'm not sure.
I make a motion that we accept the Jensen's valuation for lot 11, for $73,300.
Second.
Wait, I have a question. All right. Okay, so that's the market, that's his opinion, the market value, and typically evaluation is less than the market value.
So what price, let's come up with a price. What was the
Scott, you
assessed
can't come
value?
up.
I
I'm
just
sorry,
made a
I didn't
statement, I
mean to
didn't come up
interrupt.
with a price.
But
Huh?
you have to go with the information that's provided in the appeal. You can't come up with your own assumption of value, unfortunately. I understand your point because I'm valuing all the lots on an average that's less than that. But the appeal is based on the information that you can make the adjustment on can only be within the appeal.
So because he put what he thought was the value of the property. That's what we have to go with.
Remember, Lynn?
Yeah, I want to go back. When I look at the criteria we're given, an unequal evaluation, an excessive evaluation, improper evaluation, and under evaluation. I don't see where that piece meets any of the appellant is meeting any pieces of that criteria we're given in which to make a judgment on. That's why I went back to voted in favor of upholding the assessor's value on it. If we want to go some other place, then I think we have to go back to A through D and decide, did the assessor miss one of those points? And I don't see that. Maybe somebody convinced me here.
Well, I'm gonna go on, B, an excessive valuation, since the property sale just occurred, less than a couple of months ago. I think that kind of establishes the market. I understand it's an in-house sale, but I mean, to me, that's the best value of a piece of property is what somebody's willing to pay for it. And that's the market. And if he paid $73,300 less than 3 or 4 months ago, then I would say that by assessing it at $87,600 would be B, an excessive valuation.
Thank you.
So,
Except the 73,300. Okay. David,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Thomas, Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Donna? Yes. Thank you.
we on to appeal
2361.
2361.
2023 is Pam or John and Pam Jensen, lot 12, Ramstead. Again, this is a lot in Ramstead subdivision. The assessed value is $39,400. The appellant is saying that he bought the lot in 12/22 for $29,500. And the reason is attached. He says that there is an error or omission in the assessment of the property for the following reasons: a 63.5% increase in assessed value, 6.03 acres, landlocked. The designated and planted access road was built in place in 2017 and was part of the sales agreement of selling lots. The road does not increase the value of the property. No improvements have been made on the property. There are no Petersburg Borough services. This remote recreational property and therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining an increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very public limited interest. The assessment notice states an increase of 15% on average, 65%, 63.5% is accepting. We do not agree with the 63.5% increase, of the land placed on lot 12. There is no justification or basis for such an increase. Lot 12 was sold for $29,500, which is a 25.5% less than the new assessed value at $39,100. Again, I valued the lot based on sales. Valued the same as all the other lots in the area. And I'm recommending that the values stay the same at 39,000. It's actually $39,400, not 39,100.
I make a motion that we accept the assessor's valuation of this property.
Second. Discussion. Clerk call the roll.
Donna,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Jeff, Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Scott,
Okay, we are on appeal number 2023-62.
Appeal 2023-62, JHD Real Estate and John Jensen is the representative. This is lot 4 Ramstead. The assessed value is $40,800. They acquired the property in 2015. That was the date of the, I believe, the original plat. At that time, the consideration price, he says, is $15,800. I don't quite understand that. What do you consider the market value? Considers the market value to be $61,320. It hasn't been sold. And per the attached, he says there is an error or omission in the assessment of this property for the following reasons: a 27% increase in assessed value and is excessive, 6.32 acres, 65% of the property is boggy, limited road access, roadway was decommissioned by the U.S. Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is a remote recreational property and should not be on par with properties in Petersburg. For valuation, this is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase of be 15% on average. This property on the main road and has been for sale since 2017. Again, I valued the property the same as I valued all the other properties based on the sales that I had. I'm recommending that the assessed value be $40,800.
Questions?
Thank you. Why, if the assessed value is 40,000, why do the owners put down 61,000? Okay, thank you.
I know that Mr. Jensen has got some health issues and was out of town. I would have really liked to have had an opportunity to talk to him. I missed him by a day.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it kind of doesn't. Well, I will say that like the last property, the one we just voted on, that's nice ground. But this one, it's boggy. It's not very nice ground. Big difference. But it doesn't make sense, if he values it, like there's nothing we can do.
That's my question. I guess we kind of the problem we ran into with the $87,000 property. I mean, if we were to disagree with this valuation, how would we? What value would we be forced to value it at 60,000? Then is that because I'm inclined to agree. It seems like if the one we just talked about, 39,400, it's right next to a road, and as Scott says, perhaps more usable property compared to this one that's lost its road access and is mostly boggy. doesn't seem like people would pay the same amount of money for those two pieces of property. But yeah, I don't know if, I don't know, maybe this is something that he can just appeal next year, I guess, maybe.
No, this is, my first run at Ramstead subdivision. Not that that's trying to make an excuse, but I was trying to, for ad valorem purposes, treat all the properties the same on some matrix, in some method based on the sales information that I came up with. You know, this next year, we're going to go throughout the whole borough again and all the rural properties. Bob will be over to see you. You know, as we get into this more and go and now I'm more familiar with what's going on over there, and I can go over and actually send Arnie and Martins over there and let them walk on the property and look at them and see what they see. We can fine tune and change the matrix a little bit based on more information. Again, you know, I went through this trying to come up with a conservative number that would represent all the lots. And knowing full well that some are going to be better than others and some are going to be worse. But, and again, I know Scott doesn't agree about the accreted land, but you know, that's how they were advertised, and that's how I picked up off the plat, I picked up the gross areas for the sales when I did my sales analysis.
So I have a question for you. So next time, I mean, if you go over there and actually boots on the ground, and could you potentially, next time you assess this property, assess it lower? See that it's boggy and that, you know.
I would probably look at it and break my matrix up more between you know, water frontage or ocean frontage and boggy and usable land. Try to get more detail. I mean, we went over, I mean, Scott was there with the crew and took everybody around. We looked at the lots. You know, would I assess it lower? Maybe my matrix would change by next year. Maybe I'm going to say that the overall average assessed value is going to be $7,600 or $7,500 an acre, or go to the way upper end of the range. You know, maybe there's going to be more sales, and I'm going to be almost at $8,000 an acre for a lot of these lots. Obviously, John and George and Pam think the lots are worth a lot more than I do. Again, I'm here trying to do an ad valorem situation where I'm trying to treat everybody sort of similar and fair, knowing that there's plus and minuses all the way through the equation process.
So two things here. One, is there an option to take no action, and like what was this property assessed for last year? Do we know? And then with that in mind, the way the appeal is written, I mean, you're asking the person what do you consider the market value, when actually the question should be, what do you think the assessed value should be? You don't see what difference?
Yeah, there is a difference. Yeah, there's a
This almost
distinct, you know, we talked about this and sort of we went through the classes, you know, that the assessed value is a mass appraisal on all properties, not where market value could be described as the value of one particular piece of property. And there's a difference between appraising one property and appraising 1,000 properties. You know, you're looking at statistics and averages. And again, when I went through and did the valuation on all this, I knew that there were differences in all the properties. You know, I have been over there. I haven't walked on every one of these lots, but I've been over there and seen that the ground is damp and seeing that, you know, you're gonna have to put some fill in to do anything. And, but I felt that I needed to be fair and equitable and on average, look at the whole thing to start with, to see where we were. You know, maybe the form needs to be changed, Scott. You know,
That's all I'm saying.
that's a valid point. It's something to think about.
Because it's an appeal. So in that appeal, we're asking them what do they should have the opportunity to comment on what they feel the assessed value should be, and that's not there.
I'm taking that comment under D because Title 29 says that we're supposed to be at 100% of fair market value to mean that he thinks that the assessed value should be 61,320. But again, you don't know what somebody's thinking when they read market value and what they're thinking.
Right, what they're thinking is what I'd like to sell it for, and what you're asking is what's the fair assessed value? Two different things.
I make a recommendation that we accept the assessor's valuation for lot 5.
4.
Oh, 4, sorry. I got ahead of myself.
Second.
Discussion, clerk call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Scott, Jeff,
Yes.
Thomas. Passes.
Okay, now are we on to appeal number 2023-63?
Appeal 2023-63, JHD Real Estate, John Jensen. This is lot 5, Ramstead subdivision. The assessed value is $40,400. The appeal reads, there is an error or omission on the assessment of this property for the following reasons. 28% increase in assessed value is excessive. 6.18 acres, 70% of the property is boggy, some beaver dam activity, limited road access. Roadway was decommissioned by the U.S. Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is a remote recreational property and therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg. In determining an increase in valuation, this is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average. The property on a main road has been for sale since 2017.
So I'm confused again. He's asking that we value his property more. But then in his appeal, he states all the reason why it shouldn't be valued more.
That's correct.
So I've been confused on all of these, but I just want to point that out.
No, I was confused also. Okay. That's why I'm sticking with my original ad valorem valuation matrix that I put together on these properties, knowing that there's pluses and minuses on all the properties. And that I valued them all based on the same matrix so that they're all traded for assessment purposes, not market purposes at the same value. So again, they acquired the property in 2015 with the recording of the plat. He's saying that the market value is $60,800. My assessed value is $40,400. That's based on the sales that I was able to confirm. And I'm recommending $40,400.
I'll make a motion that we accept the valuation of this property that the assessor has recommended.
Second.
Discussion, Clerk call the roll.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Thomas, Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
To 20 appeal number 2023-64.
Appeal 2023-64, JHD Real Estate, John Jensen. This is lot 13 Ramstead. The assessed value is $39,100. The appeal reads, there is an error or omission on the assessment of this property for the following reasons: 28.5% increase in assessed value, 5.98 acres, 70% of the property is boggy, limited road access, roadway is decommissioned by Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is a remote recreational property and therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining an increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average. 28.5% is excessive. This property is on the main road and has been for sale since 2017. In the appeal, they acquired the property in 2015 with the recording of the plat. They said that the acquisition price was $14,950. They feel that the market value today is $57,100. It's for sale right now for $57,100. It's my recommendation based on the sales and the matrix I put together for Ramstead subdivision that the value should remain the same at $39,100.
Questions?
Same comment. I'm confused. I'll make a motion that we accept, I'll make a motion that we accept the assessor's recommendation on this property. I'll second it.
Discussion?
Can I just ask, so the property is on the market for sale currently for that value? Is that,
That's what he says.
or is? So I feel like, I mean, I don't know, I feel. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't, if it was on the market, you know, I mean, if Anchor Properties was gunning for that price, that would be one thing, but I don't know if that's the case or if this is just someone misunderstanding the form. But
If you're gonna sell if you're gonna sell your property, you're gonna list it at $500,000, even though it may be assessed at 400,000. I mean, isn't that that's what I would do, you know, set it at much higher than what the assessment was. Whether
So-
I get it or not is another question.
right.
These guys bought this property. I think it was 160 acres. I know what they paid for it. And then they subdivided it. So, I mean, I get it, but it was a lot less, you know, 5 years ago, this property was, or 6 years ago, whatever it was way down, way down.
First time I started going over there, there was little or no activity. I mean, there were a couple of nice houses there, you know. I mean, I drove around over there and there was nothing down towards Ramstead subdivision. There was little or nothing over there. It's what I said earlier in prior appeals about the economy and about what's happening in the market. And Petersburg and other communities all throughout Southeast Alaska are experiencing the same thing. There's a lot of interest in property. And there's a lot of interest in selling and buying homes. It's generated by supply and demand. You know, how many recreational properties are there?
Do you know how much remote property there is percentage-wise in Southeast Alaska?
All of Southeast?
All of Southeast Alaska. It's
I don't know.
1%.
Well, you know, that, there it comes back to the old economic, model of supply and demand. You know, population's growing, even though they say people are leaving the state of Alaska. It's, in my opinion, it's still a nice place to live. And, I think that property values are gonna continue to go up. Again, I valued these properties for ad valorem purposes, mass appraisal, trying to get a area of level assessment, knowing that there were differences in all the properties, that I could treat everybody equally and not try to outthink the market from the sales that I've got to determine which was up and which was down.
This,
You know.
this subdivision, are there properties? So are you basing the value on the properties in this subdivision? This is all essentially the Jensen subdivision. And then are you basing those values on properties that have sold around it or comparable properties or?
Every sale is in this subdivision.
Cause I mean, it's kind of an island. It seems like it's difficult to get to apply, you know, like an ad valorem value you're getting from other properties.
Didn't do that.
No, okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's a legitimate question. No, don't be sorry. You know, all of the comparables that I have are, lot 9, 3, 17, 16, 15, 2, 8, 11, 10, are all in the subdivision.
None of these have traded on the open market yet, I guess is what I'm getting to is
I don't
that,
think to answer your question, in looking at the recorder's office, I haven't seen any second sales on any of these lots.
So are we under discussion or?
I think there's a motion on the table.
Right.
yeah, no, I just want to say my piece. Yeah.
So any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll. I believe this is on 2023-64, correct?
Correct, to accept the assessor's value of $39,100. Thomas,
Yes,
Donna,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, David,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Can I have a snack break? A snack break.
Yes. Really?
it's done.
Sure. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. Got 3 left to go. Okay, we're on appeal number 2023-65.
Appeal 2023-65, JHD Real Estate John Jensen, lot 14. Assessed value 37.7. The appeal reads, there is an error or omission in the assessment of this property for the following reasons. 28.5 increase in assessed value, 5.77 acres, 30% of the property is boggy. Limited road access, roadway was decommissioned by the Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is remote recreational property, therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining an increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average, 28.5% is excessive. Property on the main road has been sale since 2017. I have written in here that they're saying that the assessed value is 37.7. They bought the property in 2015 for $14,425. They're saying that the market value is $68,240. I valued the property based on my valuation matrix for all the properties based on the 9 sales that I have within the subdivision. And it's my recommendation that the assessed value remain the same at 37.7.
Any questions of the assessment? Entertain a motion on this parcel.
Yes, I make a motion that we accept the assessor's appraised value.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Scott,
No.
Thomas,
Oh,
Donna, Jeff,
Yes.
Bob, David,
Yes.
Okay, we're now on appeal number 2023-66.
Appeal 2023-66, JHD Real Estate John Jensen, lot 21. Assessed values 33.3. The appeal reads, there is an error or omission on the assessment of this property for the following reasons: 28% increase in assessed value, 5.09 acres, 25% of the property is boggy, limited road access, roadway was decommissioned by the Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is a remote recreational property and therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining an increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average, 28% is excessive. The property on the main road has been for sale since 2017. The appellant acquired the property in 2015. That acquisition price was $12,725. He considers the market value to be $57,950. He says that there was a sale not completed, no sale. And again, I couldn't find anything in the public record on that sale at that price. It's my recommendation that the assessed value remain $33,300.
I make a motion that we accept the appraiser's recommended assessment.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff, Scott,
No.
Thomas,
no.
Donna,
Yes.
Okay. Stick with the assessor's recommendation. That brings us to appeal number 2023-55.
Appeal 2023-55, JHD Real Estate John Jensen. This is lot 22 of Ramstead subdivision. The assessed value is $29,500. The appeal reads, there is an error or omission in the assessment of this property for the following reasons: 28% increase in assessed value, 4.51 acres, 20% of the property is boggy, limited road access, roadway was decommissioned by the Forest Service in 1992. No improvements have been made to the property. There are no borough services. This is remote recreational property and therefore should not be on par with properties in Petersburg in determining the increase in valuation. This is a different real estate market than property found in Petersburg with very limited public interest. Assessment notice states increase will be 15% on average, 28% is excessive. This property is on the main road and has been for sale for 2017. The appellant acquired the property in 2015 for $12,275. He considers the market value to be $54,120. It says it's been for sale for the last 2 years for $54,120. Again, I'm recommending that the assessed value remain the same at $29,500 based on the assessment matrix that I put together for the 9 sales within the subdivision. And that for ad valorem purposes, again, it should be assessed at $29,500 to be on par with the other properties.
I'll make a motion that we accept the assessor's recommendation.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk call the roll.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott, Donna,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Thomas.
Okay, I believe that brings us to the end of our appeals, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
It's just a motion to adjourn from this point forward.
Mr. Mayor. I just had one question. Are we done with the Borough thing?
Yeah.
Okay, he settled it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, for now, the PDX thing isn't working for me. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a
So
second?
moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Yes, what I was trying to do.
No, well,